Welcome to Paranoid Pages, your portal to the thought-provoking world of underground comics, out of print magazines and other rare media. We'll discover hidden gems up close and in detail to capture the magic of pictures and words combined. So, gather around, friends. This is Paranoid Pages.
Hey, look at us. It's been a while since I did one of these Paranoid Pages. Not because we're stopping anytime soon or because I've run out of content. In fact, these are just 3 tarot decks that Mario helped pick out. I literally got a stack of at least like 40 of these things behind me and probably even more tucked away. And it was basically just because, long story short, I got like a huge bundle of them all at once. So I haven't really looked through them all in detail. I've seen the Mystical Melodies before, and it looked really cool. So that one I kind of already glanced over a little bit. The other 2, I've barely even opened. I opened enough to make sure they were in there, and that was it. So I also am definitely not an authority on tarot or what makes a good tarot deck and all the symbolism that's required. I've read through some of the breakdowns, like Aleister Crowley's breakdown of like the Thoth tarot deck and stuff. So I think I understand like the most superficial of symbols, but I've got an expert with me. I've got Mario from Symbolic Studies, who's graciously decided to go through these decks with me. So I'm excited to get into this. How you doing, Mario?
I'm pretty good, man. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, you sent me, I don't know how many decks, but a handful. And I looked through them and I was like, if I were at a party or something and I saw someone's tarot collection, these would probably be the 3 decks that I would want to spend a little time with after viewing a couple of previews, you know. The Occult Tarot looks pretty interesting. I'm curious to see what their correspondences are. It's a bit different, you know, in terms of the artwork and what they're trying to do with it. We'll see that in a minute. Mystical Medleys, I'm actually familiar with the creator of this deck, and I like the artwork personally, and I've seen some of the cards, and I'm like, man, they did a pretty good job with this, so I would definitely want to check that one out. And then the Pot Tarot, too. Looking at some of those cards, it put a smile on my face, so I'm kind of curious to see what else is going on there. But yeah, man, this will be fun.
Okay, I mean, all things being the same, let's just go in the order that we see them here.
Cool, let's do it.
First time that I've opened some of these. In fact, yeah, first time that I even really looked through the cards themselves. So this one actually comes in like a metal tin.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones were in cardboard. They all come with like a little general. You know how to do this, so I don't need to read the instructions. I don't read the instructions for anything. All right, and then let's see. It looks like they are in order. So I guess we'll just go kind of in order. Let me if I can zoom in here. There we go.
Gotcha.
That pretty good.
Okay, yeah, it looks good to me, man. Awesome. Okay, yeah, so I actually have my book on the Goetia right here, should I want to look up anything. Okay, so they're saying that Baal here is corresponding with the Emperor. So, interesting. Okay, so I see off the bat that they're already kind of playing a little bit with the order of things. So, this being the first card, I don't know if they have a card that's symbolic of the Fool. But generally, the Emperor card is the 4th card, you know, of the major arcana. And I can kind of see a correspondence here. Obviously, with this figure, too, it looks like the person in the middle is supposed to be like a king or some sort, right? Or a lord. And so that makes a lot of sense, I would say, with Baal. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to have how much information I'm going to have about each one of these, but I'm kind of just more curious to see what they decided to do.
Well, like, for example, your observation that this normally would be the Fool card.
Right.
So that's interesting. Like, I wonder if there's any kind of Fool symbolism or if it's literally just, hey, let's just find a bunch of occult stuff and throw it in a tarot deck and see what flies.
That could be the case too, man. That happens all the time. Well, I'm noticing that these are out of order actually too. So maybe, I don't know if it was ever like that. It doesn't really matter to me. You know, we can look at whatever ones make sense. So yeah, they're all mixed up.
Well, they've got like, so it has like a little number 1 right here, which almost implies like that's number 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and I guess we won't go through every single one of these, but I'll just kind of go through, and if you see some that strike your eye, just stop me and we can analyze a little bit. And then, in case you can't tell, it's kind of cool, but it's got this little hollow foil effect on the sides. So that's nice.
Oh,
I don't know if
cool.
that
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
it more powerful or it's an aesthetic thing.
Right, right. Yeah, you can just cruise through some of these, and I'll stop you when I see one. Oh, okay, interesting. The tower, Visago. I don't know anything about that at all, but I mean, the tower card's one of my favorite cards of all time. So it looks like that's supposed to be, the Tower of Babel, right there, right? So it looks like that's kind of like the model of the design. And then what does it say here? Promoter of discord, war, arguments, and falsehood, gives generous responses. Not sure what kind of skull that's supposed to be up top, but as an
It's like a
example, that's
bird
something that,
skull.
yeah, I mean that does, yeah, right. That makes sense. So interesting. It looks like there's smoke coming out of the skull too. So generally, you see the tower kind of coming down and everything else. Yeah, I might look into this one to see what else I can learn about it.
I'll set that one. I'll set some of these aside. The ones that stand out, I'll set aside, and we can look it up later.
Cool,
Uh,
cool.
this one's a horse. The Five
Interesting.
of
Yeah.
Pentacles,
Uh-huh.
10 of Wands.
Oh, actually, can you put that one on the screen for a second there? Because one of the threads, so we're still in Leo season. We're going to be in Leo season for, I believe, 1 or 2 more days. And I found an interesting thread relating lions with pillars. So that's actually something that I've talked about before on my channel. There's actually a really interesting sort of historical kind of correspondence between pillars and lions and figures that represent sort of like a maiden archetype or like a virgin, right? So Virgo and Leo are right next to each other. So I'm not surprised to see this lion with a pillar. And actually, I'm going to take a screenshot of this one because one of the things I'm interested in particular right now is the lion kind of being the modern king of animals in a lot of ways. But I'm tracking this thread, and I just got a book in the mail about how specifically in Europe and other parts of the world, the bear for a very long time was considered the king of animals. And the bear was sort of symbolically dethroned, and the new king became the lion. And actually, the church itself tried to sort of smear the bear and turn it into something demonic and promote people to not follow or worship the bear. But it's because they were trying to get rid of, pagan influence and everything else. So right now, lions are definitely part of my weave. Pillars have always been part of my weave. So this is something that I'll definitely look into later. Marbus.
And someone pointed out Corinthian pillar, maybe. Corinthian, maybe a composite. It's actually kind of hard to tell, but
yeah,
the
right.
Corinthian being the ornate version, right? You got Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, composite, a few others.
Good call. Yeah, exactly.
It does, and usually when you see the ornate columns like that, it tends to infer like a higher degree of sophistication or complexity.
Right. Definitely. And then if you notice the shield too, take a look at that guy.
I didn't even realize that was a shield.
It looks like the figure on the shield is holding a jawbone. It looks like a symbolic sort of wand or pillar itself, though, almost like they're kind of doing the same sort of thing. But to me, it almost looks like a jawbone or something.
You're
That's
totally
pretty
right.
Interesting, right?
It definitely looks like a jawbone.
Yeah, very, very interesting. That's cool.
Let's see. 4 Pentacles.
Right, Valafor.
10 of Pentacles. Barbados?
Barbados.
Is that the name?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Here, so we had a special request for Paimon, so I guess we got to do a Paimon.
Is this thanks to Hereditary, you think? Have you seen Hereditary?
I have seen Hereditary, and I guess it is, well, at least the comment of, like, please do Paimon, probably influenced by Hereditary.
So in Hereditary, right, this is the demon that they're working with. So if you go to the bottom of the card, you see the sigils down below. That's the sigil you're going to see in Hereditary. And so that movie is like one of my favorite modern horror movies. It's so good. I really personally liked it. My fiance and we saw it in the movie theater, and my palms were sweaty. I don't know if it had the same effect on you, but I really dug it. I thought it was really good. But yeah, Paimon, I was kind of curious to see where that would show up, because now, ever since that film, I'm kind of always looking for it when appropriate, or I'm always just kind of curious to see how people interpret it. But Queen of Wands, okay. One of the things I'll say here regarding camels is that, and you probably know a bit about this, I'm assuming, but crossing the desert in like the Western esoteric tradition, and I know that that's influenced from groups, further east in the Middle East and things like that. But crossing the desert is kind of synonymous with going to the other side, with kind of crossing the abyss, right? And so the vehicle of the desert was the camel. So the camel has this symbolic association with going to the underworld, or going to the afterlife or something like that. And crossing the desert has kind of been this metaphor that alludes to that pretty much. And this is really baked into actually the High Priestess card. The High Priestess card, the Hebrew letter associated with it is Gimel, which means camel. And when you look at the path on the Kabbalistic tree of the High Priestess, it goes across Doth, or Da'at, which is like the hidden Sephiroth, which is like emblematic of going to like the dark side of everything. So the Klipothic tree, the tree of death, and everything else. So camel symbolism to me is like really, really interesting for that reason, that it's basically a vehicle that takes you, to the great beyond, if you will.
All right. Let's see what else we got here. This is one of my favorite design, and so I recognize some of these from, I'm gonna mispronounce it, but I think it's called like Dictionary Infernalis or Diablos or something, like the Dictionary of the Devil, and it has a lot of these. I think it's the source of some of these illustrations. It's like an old grimoire.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. So it's the source of these illustrations, and did they refer to it as the Goetia? Is that your understanding?
It's some of them, not all of them. I believe the rest are like pieced together from various places. But yeah, Goetia is the main source for, I think, like this one in particular, and some of the other ones we saw. The very first one that had like the cat frog king guy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I just saw this illustration today, and it scrambles my brain a little bit just looking at it. How odd it is. It's unsettling to me. And then so with those 5 legs, that's like it's just a wild image. But yeah, I don't know too much about it.
This is like a bear man of some kind. Kind of cool. 3 of Cups.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. Okay. Ace of Swords.
That's interesting. We got like an archer, 9 of Swords.
Right. King of Swords. Interesting. Zepar, the Lovers. Let me see that again, actually, if you don't mind. Just for a quick second. Okay, so causes women to love men and brings them together in love, can make women barren. Oh, interesting. Yeah, the Lovers, one of the things that's kind of curious that I'm just noticing right off the bat, you'll notice that a lot of older Lovers cards in particular, their hands are always put in like really interesting positions. So I used to say that they're a very handsy sort of group. Usually you see 3 people, and sometimes you can't even determine who's actually marrying who and if they're happy to be married to this person. It sometimes looks like a wedding ceremony. Sometimes it almost looks like an argument or something like that. But I'm just noticing that what looks like the male figure is grabbing her dress. And so that's kind of a curious sort of thing, of what's being implied there. And then his hand is also, looks like it's holding on to part of a shield or an abstract shield or something like that. But whenever I look at the Lovers card, I always want to notice what the hands are doing. Sometimes it's very, very odd. So that's kind of something here that, I'm kind of just contemplating what that might mean. But just something I thought I'd point out real quick.
All right, we've got a snake for the Page of Swords.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have a bunch of dumb questions. What's a Page of Swords? Like, what's a page mean? Is that the Jack?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, totally. So the page is more of like an observer. He's more of an apprentice. He's usually younger. He's just starting his journey. The way I tend to look at the court cards is the page will turn into the knight. And then with the knight, he gets armor, and then he gets his horse. And so he's traveling and things like that. And then the knight eventually, after acquiring the queen, will become a king. So I always see it as you're kind of looking at the transition or the evolution of like one figure. Yeah.
And then speaking of, we got a Knight of Swords.
Interesting.
This does look like a progression of some kind, because here's a page with just a snake, and now we've got the Knight, and it's got like a snake tail on the guy, I guess.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Okay. Long lance on that guy. Salos.
Here's a cool. It's like a Lord of the Rings style dwarf riding crocodile.
Right. Totally.
That's
cool.
4 of Wands is a guy riding what looks like a bear.
Yeah,
wearing the head of a lion and a horn.
That's what I think is really interesting, because according to what I've picked up is that the lion basically took over the throne of the bear. The book I just ordered and received is called something about the bear, Story of a Fallen King. And so I think that's kind of interesting, that he's actually riding the bear. He's taming the bear. In the tarot, the card that associates with Leo the lion is strength. And generally what you see is a woman. To me, she's very much symbolic of Virgo. They're right next to each other again. And she is taming him, right? She's holding his jaws closed. Some people say she's opening it. But she's taming that beast. And so this is a clear taming of the old beast, basically. So the bear is a heavy pagan animal of worship, basically. And I'm inclined to think that there were bear cults and all sorts of other stuff back in the day. This is more related to the primordial tradition, which connects with Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the Big Bear and Little Bear, the Great Dipper and Little Dipper. So anyway, I just think it's interesting that we even have a card or illustration here showing these two kings, from different eras, basically. But that's cool. I like this one.
Page of Pentacles. I don't even know what to make of this. It's like a goat beast.
It looks like a goat lion of some sort. Oh, yeah, he even has hooves. Look at that. Yeah, interesting. Teaches astronomy and liberal science, knows the virtues of precious stones and herbs, gives very good familiars. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that one.
A lot of these say gives good familiars. What does that mean? You would like ask the cards, what your familiar is going to be, or he would actually procure one for you? Like, what does it mean gives good familiars?
That's a good question, man. I'm not really sure. Yeah, is that like a giving good? I mean, is a familiar like I always think of like familiar spirit, right? So I don't know.
Like Harry Potter's owl, right? That's his familiar.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe some of these figures, like they give you spirits to work with on their behalf or something. It's kind of a hierarchy, maybe.
Yeah, and someone asking, is that the demon sigil at the bottom of the cards? I believe so. I believe every one of these cards has a sigil at the bottom that represents whatever I guess I'm going to say demon is for each of these. This one being Marax. Haven't heard of almost any of these so far.
Yeah, a lot of them I haven't heard of either.
This one's interesting. It's like a duck or an ostrich combined, and it even has like little duck feet, but it's combined with a lion, I guess.
Right. Yeah, totally. Interesting. So just to say too, you've probably covered this, I'm sure, on other episodes, but it was King Solomon, right, that worked with some of these demons to construct supposedly his temple, correct? That's my understanding.
I believe so. Yeah, that's where some of the sigil magic maybe comes from, the OG one being like the Seal of Solomon, but that he might have had different ones for different daemons. And I also believe that some of these sigils might be Enochian, like John Dee would make these little magic squares and he would plot out where the letters or where like astrological paths were on these little magic squares, and that would go into the construction of some of these sigils.
Right, totally. So when I read Solomon's account of meeting some of these demons, right, one of the things that he does is he asks them, like, what are they good at? And based on what they're good at, that's what he assigned them to do for the temple. So he thought that these demons were good at doing different things. And so he kind of used their strength and put them to work, basically. But my personal opinion is I don't even know if any of Solomon's temples are actually like have really existed, and I think Solomon may be a mythological figure and not actually historical in nature.
You take that, but next you're going to tell me Hiram Abiff wasn't a real person that got hit in the head. Come on.
I love the lore mythology surrounding it, though. It's very potent. It doesn't take away from the value of the story and some of the symbols and things like that.
Here we've got what I'm going to say is a well-endowed demon.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, totally. Whoa. I'm just looking at the heads right now. So like a demonic head and then a cat, and then it looks like another serpent or something. Yeah, this one's new to me. I haven't seen this before. So that's pretty interesting. Aimed. It's kind of curious. Reveals secrets and increases one's intellect. Spreads destruction by fire.
Some of these almost sound like Magic the Gathering cards. Like, totally. I cast one fire.
The thing I was just going to say is that I aim is the mantra for Sagittarius, which is associated with Jupiter and fire. And then here he's holding, like a torch, and then it mentions something about fire down below. So just random thought.
Here we got, I guess, a crow sitting on top of a urn.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I immediately think of alchemy and Negretto or putrefaction, and I believe even in the Crowley deck, he does have. I believe it's the temperance card or art card is what he calls it, and he does have a crow on top of a cauldron. So to me, I kind of get a similar sort of vibe, crow and cauldron sort of idea. So teaches arts, sciences, and rhetoric, restores lost honors and dignities, takes honor and dignity from others. Oh, okay, cool. And then crows are just cool birds, man. They're really smart. So I kind of like this
Someone was
one.
asking if you just joined and you're wondering what we're looking at. This one is the Occult Tarot by Travis McHenry. So if you're interested in that, you can just look up Travis. He's got a few different decks that he's put out recently, I believe.
Right.
Okay. I don't know what
Me-
this is.
Me neither. What is this? A dog?
A dog, goat, angel.
Yeah, dog, goat, angel. Okay, right. Interesting. Okay, so
Can make you
causes
invisible.
murder and bloodshed, tells of things to come, causes the love of friends or enemies, can make one invisible. Nice.
It's kind of a jack of
Interesting.
all trades, man. This guy does all kinds of cool stuff.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. The
The
sun.
sun.
Boon. All right. So more heads again. Looks like it's being worshipped. Interesting. Okay. Makes one rich, smart, and well spoken, gathers spirits at tombs, and changes the places of the dead. Interesting. Okay. Nice. Yeah, that one's new to me too.
This looks like a little homunculus.
It does. Right. Yeah,
See how
exactly.
big the ears and the lips are? I mean, there's like a
Right.
monkey aspect, but there's definitely like a homunculus aspect.
No, you're right. Look at the proportions for sure. So 8 of wands. Okay. And then what does it say down below? Teaches rhetoric very well, gives faithful servants favor of friends and foes and knowledge of languages. Okay, interesting. Well, that's so yeah. I just the fact that it's holding, a pole or a staff or a wand, very very synonymous. Okay, so I'm also just kind of seeing that it's like a tarot deck, but they all have just like a common number associated with it. So from 1 through 78, I'm assuming here, or sorry, 72. Anyways, I'm just kind of just acknowledging the system of what they're kind of rolling with here. And then does that mean that it's the 27th Goetic demon too, or what? Let me see. I'm gonna look real fast. Just
Oh,
kinda
that's a great
curious.
question. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the
it is.
27th card. Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
the order of the cards are more to do with how they're listed in the Goetia versus what tarot it is.
Okay, yeah, that's what it seems like. Right. Yep. Okay.
This almost looks like
So
a more
there.
traditional playing card king.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, cool. So yeah, that is number 28. Interesting. Okay.
Astaroth.
Astaroth, right. Wow. That one's pretty interesting. Okay. Tell how the angels fell, reveals the past, present, and future, teaches a liberal stance. Okay. That's cool. Well, what do you think? What kind of head is that supposed to be on that creature there?
It definitely looks like a jackal or a wolf or a hyena.
Right, yeah.
It's sometimes hard to tell, like, what was their the guy that drew it, what was their reference? Had they just, like when you see the horses in medieval paintings, and it's like, I know it's supposed to be a horse, but maybe the
Right.
artist had just never seen a horse in that
Oh,
perspective.
yeah, exactly.
So it's hard to tell. Is that a wolf, a hyena? I would say a wolf, I guess.
Right. Its wings are pretty interesting. It has angelic wings in the back, and then it has these more sort of demonic wings, but it's really protecting him kind of. It's like acting as like an enclosure or something like that. So that's kind of curious.
6 of Caps is Fornius, which, what is that? A peanut with wings?
Wow. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
A pea
That's
something.
very odd. Yeah. It's interesting. So it's cool because in my book at least, like some of these demons aren't even illustrated. They're not really shown. So like this one isn't even in my book, but here it is. So for us. Oh,
I've
interesting.
seen this
Bodybuilder.
illustration before, and it seems almost like dated from a certain time period. I don't know if this kind of look of like the strong man with the handlebar mustache and the barbells, it almost reminds me of like like a Bailey's circus kind of thing, right? Like a early 1900s sort of
Right. Oh yeah.
aesthetic.
Oh, totally. Totally. Definitely. Crowley has his sketch in this book. So that's what he does in this book, at least, is show his sort of interpretation of some of these demons. And it's a man with a huge erection. So that's how Crowley interpreted this demon.
Okay, well,
No
he's got two
surprise
big
there, I
balls.
guess. Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Asmodeus.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
Asmodeus. Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. You might be right. You could very well be right, dude. Yeah. One of the
I just
things
think
that
of
I've noticed.
Amadeus.
One of the things that I kind of noticed about this one, right? Well, I guess it's different. I mean, some of the fixed signs are kind of here, or you can kind of argue. The cherubim angels. Sometimes you see them on tarot decks, right, or in tarot cards. You have the bull, the lion, and then a man, and then what's the last
Reminds me of
one?
this
What
one
am
a
I
little
spacing
bit.
out? The eagle. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So very odd. Just kind of how they're constructed and stuff. Not intended to be like realistic in the flesh, like they could walk around like that or anything.
Gap.
Gop.
This is that, or I don't know if it's Gop or Gap, but this one
Yeah.
actually I recognize from. Oh, I can't remember the name. There was a horror show, and it was like a black guy that was summoning some demon, or a lady that was summoning a demon from a television
Mm.
show, and she was watching a performance of Rasputin, that like the disco song Rasputin, and they end up summoning Gap as part of that. So
Oh wow.
man, I wish I could remember what the name of the show was.
Interesting. Yeah. So for the star card, yeah. So some of these correspondences, obviously where I'm at with most things is I think if you want to learn the system, it's probably best to look at older decks, the kind of like classic decks. And a lot of newer decks, they're kind of just having fun and they might have like a really, really good reason for associating these demons with these cards. But like as an example, it's like I love the star card and the symbolism behind it and like everything it sort of encodes. And I've never seen a star card that looks remotely close to this like at all. So I'm not saying that there isn't like a real correspondence here or something to kind of glean from it, but definitely from my perspective, seems like there's something to kind of be desired in that regard. It's non-traditional, so I recommend people go with older decks if they want to learn the system. And so that's more of what I have in my personal collection, but I do love some new decks too.
I do feel, I mean, I'm just assuming going in, but yeah, they needed to get through all the tarot cards, and they had a certain list of Goetia demons, and they were just like, sure, that one will be wands, and that one
Let's
will be
just do
the
that.
sun, and
Let's roll with that. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, fur. Huh,
This
yeah,
one reminds me of like there was an alchemical drawing. It's in Secret Teachings of All Ages, but it kind of shows the antlers, and the antlers have stars at the ends of each one, which was also one of the motifs in the Surreal Dinner Ball. If you ever look at the Rothschild Dinner Ball,
oh
there's
yeah,
a lady that dresses up
right.
exactly like that same alchemical deer, which I believe it's all
Oh
astrological.
yeah, that's really cool. Interesting.
Marcosia. I'm going to embarrass myself pronouncing any of these. Marcosius? That sounds right.
Yeah, let's roll with that. Okay, interesting.
All right, this one's one of my favorites. I don't know why. It's just like a cool looking owl with his hands in his pockets, I'm going to assume, if you were wearing pants.
Right, it is iconic. Every time I see it, I do kind of stop and look at it because I do think it's interesting.
And I wonder what this is. The four
Oh wow,
sixes.
right.
I
I'm
don't know if
not
you can read
sure.
that. It's I mean, it's in Latin, so I'll embarrass myself more, but it's secretum secatorum to operans secretus horum. It's really small. Lots of secrets. They're talking about lots of secrets.
That's what it seems like. Interesting.
A peacock, I'm going to assume, or of some
Yeah,
kind. Phoenix.
looks like it.
Oh, well, it says it right freaking
Oh,
there.
interesting. Right. Huh. So I wonder if that's an obvious reference to the Phoenix, or if that's where Phoenix comes from. Maybe teaches all sciences, performs wonderful poetry, follows all requests with excellence. Interesting. Yeah, the peacock is a fascinating creature too. There's I think it's the Yazidis who are always like credited with worshiping like the devil or Satan or something like that. I think the peacock is kind of like a substitute animal for their entity.
And
So
when
I need to do more peacock research, but I know it's a rabbit hole.
well, I did a deep dive on Occult Disney, and I believe it was Sleeping Beauty. Might have been Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, but one of them. And it shows the evil queen at the beginning sits in this big throne, and it has these big peacock feathers that span it. And I was looking, I guess
Uh-huh.
in the Middle Ages, there were some interpretations of the peacock as representing the evil eye because it had this huge eye pattern
Right.
at the tip of all of its feathers. So they kind of saw it as like this big brother sort of
Yeah.
aspect.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
All right, here we've got,
Halphus.
I guess it looks like the spy versus spy sort of guy,
Right.
or maybe Beetlejuice. Alec Baldwin pulls his nose out.
Right. Yeah. So one thing that I'll just say, both of these cards actually, bird symbolism associating it with swords. So swords relating to air. That's kind of a classic correspondence. And then both of these cards are sword cards too. And so bird symbolism, feather
Why do
symbolism.
swords relate to air?
So the way I see it, and there is sort of debate, and there are different systems and stuff. So as an example, some people associate swords with fire more, but in most tarot decks that you see, you're going to see it associated with air. So air is considered by most people to be the fastest element of the 4 elements or 5 elements. And so the element of earth would be considered to be the slowest element. And so when it comes to the sword, it's like even thinking about like sword play, or if you're in a sword fight, you have to think quickly. The sword is very decisive. So there's kind of like no gray area with the sword. It's like it's either piercing something or cutting something, or it's not. And so a lot of air symbolism and a lot of air signs do have to do with like making decisions or with judgments and things like that. Because the sword divides, it'll take the one and separate it into 2. And you'll notice that a lot of air signs actually have like a dualistic sort of component to it. So like Gemini, it's the twins. So the evil twin, the good twin. And then even with like Libra, you have the 2 scales, right? So balancing these 2 sort of things, black and white, masculine, feminine, whatever it might be.
That's so cool. I'm gonna have to look out for that more. I've never even heard that before about the swords and the duality.
Oh yeah, it's a huge thing for sure. And even Lady Justice, as an example, she holds scales in one hand, but then she also holds the sword in the other hand. The sword is actually kind of like a substitute symbol for the scales, even actually. And when you see a sword pointed upright, like in the Ace of Swords, it represents clarity. It represents focus, things like that. Whenever you see swords and they're kind of like all haphazard or pointing in different directions, that kind of usually represents like confusion or obfuscation of some kind or something like that. But yeah,
I have to ask: are we at danger of summoning a demon right now? Because I didn't do
I think we're good.
I didn't put salt down or nothing.
No, man, I think you're solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raum?
So Rom, yeah, huh?
Rom. Again, good point. I guess all the swords are birds or avian,
Okay, there you go.
Creatures, right? And this
Right,
one's
right.
feasting on the carcass of what looks like a dead deer.
Yeah,
dead
exactly. Steals treasures from kings, destroys cities and the dignities of men, tells of things past, present, and future, causes love between friends and foes, right? Yeah, interesting. So more swords, and then kind of like flying or air symbolism. Folklore.
Oh, this is the Starbucks lady.
Yeah, it is, right, exactly. Nice. So cup symbolism, that makes sense with water and everything else. Guide of the waters can make storms and rough seas, causes men to die in 3 days of putrid wounds.
Oh, it's literally the Starbucks lady, right? The siren.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. The mirror thing, that's kind of curious. I'm sure there's a whole weave with that. But I like that detail.
Well, I guess mirror and water kind of being very similar.
There you go, man. Right? That's it. Yeah, 100%.
And if she's a siren, this was also the concept of illusion of baiting somebody under some different pretense or using your voice. Also, the mirror always being associated with some sort of like illusion.
Yes, right. Great points, man.
All right, now we're getting badass. This is the Five of Swords, and we've got a
Wow.
lion in full sort of like knighted armor and like a knighted horse.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. So builds. Oops,
Oh,
it's fine.
sorry.
Builds high towers, castles, and I'm assuming cities. Afflicts men for many days with full wounds of rot and maggots. Oh.
Shax, one of the better names, I think. It actually sounds like it could be like a badass
Interesting.
70s band.
Right. Four of Cups. Nice. That's cool. That's interesting. I've never seen that one.
It was like a horse with a stork. That's cool.
Right. Another lion head? Is that what I'm seeing?
Vine? Yeah, this is just the card
strength.
for strength.
Okay,
And this one
so
almost
this
looks
is
like a Templar.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. So this is the proper, or this is kind of more proper, just given the strength correspondence with Leo and things like that. But you're definitely seeing the lion in a more prominent, powerful position than in normal strength cards. Builds towers. So once again, the tower, to me, tower symbolism and pillar symbolism, very closely related to each other. When I see a pillar or a column, I think I maybe mentioned this last time we talked, but to me, the main symbolic thread with it is that it spans the gap, it bridges the gap between the above and below, right? And so a tower symbolism, that's what the Tower of Babel is all about, is they were trying to like storm the gates of heaven. They were trying to get closer to the gods and everything else. And so the fact that he's associated with tower building, I think is just kind of curious because again, lions and columns and stuff, I've seen a number of myths and storylines that like parallel the two for different reasons. And I would say that an upright column kind of symbolically represents order, and then when you see it being destroyed or it's broken, that's definitely more chaotic in my opinion. It's kind of like a yang and yin sort of thing.
This is crazy. I guess this is more modern. Here we see Hillary Clinton donning her human skin, I'm assuming.
It almost looks like the head of a Bigfoot or something. The skin, at least, itself.
It does, or like an old man or something.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Wow, that's brutal. So it teaches natural and planetary sciences. Something corpse lights above graves and moves bodies so the souls may be stolen. And then you got a picture of Janus down there, what looks like, or something very similar. I see a lot of Janus symbolism being very much related to mercurial symbolism. I tend to think a lot of things go back to Mercury, actually. The dualistic sort of nature of Mercury, the divine androgyne, masculine, feminine. And then here, too, you can kind of see that there's this dualistic idea with this figure as well, right? And then holding a blade, too, kind of even adds to that, right? Like with the seen and then sort of the unseen sort of side of things.
Now,
What's
if this is
underneath
supposed to be the
surface?
hanged man, how close does this correspond to hangman symbolism?
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, if you look at the skin suit's hanging.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, the hanged man, it's about like new perspectives. It's seeing things sort of in a new light. To me, a big theme that I think overlaps with this is kind of enlightenment through sort of struggle or kind of like transmuting traumas to get to the next level of things. It relates to this dying god myth that a lot of different cultures have. So Christ is a good example of this. Christ was crucified on the cross, but that was sort of a means for him to evolve and turn into something else, something greater. So definitely there's like a suffering sort of aspect, and with the hangman, a binding aspect, not being able to leave, that tree or whatever that he's hanging from. But ultimately that this is going to lead him towards more prosperity and a deeper sort of awareness of self and everything else. He levels up because of it.
Here we've got a 3 of Wands, and I don't know if it's just my eyes, but it looks like a creature that's kind of hunched over and has like weird camel feet. But also, if you kind of like squint, it looks like a face. Like my thumb is right on its mouth, and then there's like a nose above it.
Oh,
and like a brow up here, right? Kind of looks like a face. I don't know if that's just me seeing that or if that's supposed to be like that.
Dude, these older illustrators, man, with tarot decks and things like that, they were on another level. They loved to encode things. Their understanding of subliminal symbolism is way greater than I think illustrators and artists today. And so I see a lot of. I know this didn't come from a tarot deck necessarily, but I have some older tarot decks from like the 15th, 16th century, and what they embed in the illustrations is next level. It's really, really wild stuff. So me personally, I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that.
Someone had a note here: walls, Mura, Moors, and also it says wall on the bottom right of this thing.
Oh.
And again, this is just me making like random off the cuff speculations, but even the symbol and the sigil look like a big W.
Oh, there you go, man. Yeah, totally. It does. It almost looks like the upper half of like a castle or a fortress too, or something, or potentially a wall. Yeah. Huh.
That's a cool one. This one's Queen of Pentacles. Agenti.
Okay.
And this is like a cow
cool.
with wings and a shield, and it's got like a little snake biting it, maybe.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Queen of Pentacles, I think that's very appropriate for the cow, for sure, for a few different reasons. But, the cow has been viewed as like the second mother of mankind. The Queen of Pentacles, you're dealing with water symbolism and earth symbolism. And then the fact that it's sort of angelic too, is kind of interesting. But yeah, I like that correspondence.
Temperance, we've got an angel playing a trumpet, it looks like.
Totally. So that's pretty common for the Temperance card to have an angelic figure. I think it's kind of interesting that usually the Temperance card, she's holding, or the angel's holding two cups, pouring from one cup to the other, but instead here they're holding two trumpets. So that's kind of interesting. Furcus, the hermit. Oh, okay.
Uncle Furcus, we call him in my family.
Right. I mean, certainly the hermit is well known for having, a big beard. Generally, he's associated with a staff, right, a walking stick, but instead he has that spear. And then the hermit definitely is a traveler. In my opinion, the modern hermit that you see is actually modeled after the shepherd. And so he is sort of a guide of souls sort of person, a guide of his flock. And so he is a known traveler. The hermit card corresponds with Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, Mercury being a messenger of the gods. So the fact that the hermit here is actually traveling and has that beard, there's definitely a few things going on with it that makes sense.
Oh, we've got another king riding a bear of some kind.
Wow.
So this is what, subjugation of the older religion? Is that kind of what this represents?
That's how I see it, man. Exactly right. Yep, for sure. And the way I tend to see it is that this older religion of the bear, it was more primordial, it was more northern, it was more polar in nature. What I keep on going on about is that there was a major switch symbolically between polar and solar worship, pretty much, and that we live in a solarized kind of age right now, a solarized world. But ancient peoples, a lot of ancient groups, like they were all about polar symbolism, and the bear is right there. Even I believe bear, like Arctos, Arctic, like it's all related to like bear symbolism. So anyways, so I'm gonna kind of look into this a little bit because I'm curious to learn more about why they're riding the bear.
And this is just more speculation on my part, but whenever I see Baal now in any form, but Baal, I assume that's Baal, which usually refers to like a lord or a king, but also it tends to refer to Baal Hammon, who was the two-horned god, and here we also have the king riding on the bear with two horns. So I wonder if the Baal and the two horns and the lord aspect sort of all relate.
Yeah, good call. And I'm just noticing the bear on it, or sorry, excuse me, the bird on its wrist too. I was like, what is he holding there? But now I'm seeing that it's like a bird. It looks like maybe like a falcon or something. That has like
it has a little leather hat on. It's like a falcon hat.
Right. That's cool.
Oh, totally. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
All right, this guy's like dripping hard.
Whoa, damn.
This is the King of Cups.
Right.
and I don't even know it. He almost has like an aquatic horse. If you look close at the horse's
Oh,
feet,
sweet.
they look
Yeah.
like duck feet almost. They
Yeah.
got like a
There's a
webbed.
totally. There's a huge correspondence with horses and water symbolism. So, if I'm not mistaken, Poseidon maybe is the god of horses. And then I know there's a relationship with the word mare, meaning either ocean or sea, and then mare like a horse. And so, yeah, that's an ancient sort of correspondence, horses and water.
And
So
this being the
that kind of
King
makes
of Cups,
sense. And
that would
King of
make
Cups,
sense,
yes,
right? Because he's
exactly.
got all sorts of water symbolism in this.
Right, right, yeah, totally.
Okay, this is a fancy one.
Oh, this is the Fool. Okay, air symbolism. That makes sense. So is this supposed to be? Let's see here, like a hummingbird or something, right? That's what
Or
it
a
looks like,
woodpecker.
or a woodpecker. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Maybe a
So
hummingbird.
air
Good question.
symbolism correlates with the Fool in like a few different ways. I would say the biggest thing to me, and this is more of a practical thing, but like living lightly. He's living lightly, right? He doesn't take anything too serious. And so he's living sort of in the present moment. And you'll notice that the Fool generally he has a walking stick and he has a bag with his belongings. But he's also traveling lightly too. And so there's this whole idea that you don't want to be encumbered in this life. You don't want to be weighed down with a ton of baggage. This kind of relates to the weighing of the soul's ritual, right? So weighing your soul against a feather, the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth. If your heart is heavier than the feather, that is not favorable for the afterlife journey. But if it's lighter than the feather, it is favorable for the afterlife journey. So the fact that they're kind of synchronizing bird symbolism with the Fool definitely makes sense for a few reasons. Oftentimes, too, even the Fool, he has like a feather plume kind of coming from his cap.
Now, if it's the Fool, doesn't it need to be there should be a dog by his feet, and it should be like looking over some big horizon, like about to embark on a huge journey? Would that be more typical Fool symbolism, right?
That would be more traditional, yeah. Usually having some creature kind of nipping at its heels. I'll say it's very interesting, but the older decks, the creature, the dog, sometimes they kind of look like a cat. Crowley used a tiger in his version, but oftentimes they're biting literally the thigh of the Fool. And so I got into that symbolism. I did a full card breakdown on my Patreon, and I talk about why he's biting the thigh and why thigh symbolism is so deep, too. It's very sneaky. Once you kind of understand thigh symbolism and leg symbolism and kind of what it can potentially represent, I've been surprised at like how many saints and gods and stuff were wounded in the thigh or had a golden thigh or their leg was cut off or something like that. And so even the fact that he has his toe, see how he's kind of like he's acknowledging his toe with his right leg or whatever, that's a very like mercurial sort of gesture. You'll see that Mercury Hermes that oftentimes he's like on his tippy toes or he's acknowledging sort of one toe. It means a lot of different things, but there's also like a lightness kind of implied to it, I would say, which makes sense for like a bird.
Murmur. The Six of Wands.
Six of Wands, yeah.
And this is like a little dude. This is like almost a Dr. Seuss style horn that he's like blowing on. And he's riding what looks to be the cross between a goat and I don't even know, a lion's tail that almost has like a little flower sort of growing out of the end of it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, this might be. I could be mistaken. It looks griffin-like.
Yeah, very much griffin.
Yeah, teaches philosophy perfectly, brings souls back from the dead to answer questions. Nice.
That would suck to get pulled back from the dead just to answer a bunch of test questions.
Right.
Orobos, which is a horseman creature, like where the wild things are almost.
Yeah, you're right. Wow, interesting. You know, what do you think about some of these creatures? Do you think like mermaids or centaurs? Where are you at? You think they're purely mythical, allegorical, or do you think that there's a possibility that they existed or perhaps still exist somewhere?
Depends on the context. If we're talking alien ant farm, like we're just alien sort of experiments where someone combined monkeys with whatever, then yeah, I believe in all those weird little hybrids, and I would also believe that they could be stamped out. Yes, especially if it had no practical purpose other than just being created at some point. So maybe, although I think I would usually lean more towards like mythological combinations and astrological representations.
Mhm. Right, totally. That's where I lean towards as well. I think there's maybe a few exceptions out there potentially where there was a real sort of variant that existed, but you just have to think. I mean, most of these cards they're all hybridized, between several different animals. So it just makes you
We got
wonder.
another camel one. This is the Empress.
Oh, sweet, perfect, exactly. That's what I was saying earlier. Oh no, this is the Empress, not the High Priestess. But they're right next to each other. The Empress and the High Priestess. Empress being the third card of the Major Arcana. High Priestess being the second. So I see them being very much related. But yeah, there's interesting symbolism. I mean, basically, there's like hidden doorway, portal, gateway symbolism like baked into camel stuff. Like I'm pretty convinced of that at this point. And then also with the Empress herself, mother is how we get to this domain. We all come through mom. And then even she has like the crescent moon, in her headdress or whatever, and the crescent moon being related to like arc symbolism and being related to travel. It's almost like a container, it's almost like a boat or something along those lines. The moon is always evolving and changing from waxing to waning moon. And so the moon in and of itself like relates to cycles and travel and things like that. And the camel definitely relates to that stuff too.
My Cherie, you're right. I've got a stack of these. So if people like this little tarot review, like we can keep doing these things for a long time. I've got a bunch of them.
Totally. Yeah, for sure.
This is like the most straightforward, although I don't know if it's creative liberties or technical thing, but it has a weird neck. But otherwise, it looks like a traditional leopard, right?
Yeah.
Cheetah? Leopard? Cheetah?
Yeah, I think cheetah.
Cheetah.
I could be
Spot
mistaken.
for stripes, right?
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's related to cup symbolism. Not sure how exactly, but this could be one of those creative liberties or trying to make things fit.
Amy, shout out to Amy. It's probably not how you pronounce it, but that's
literally, what is Amy? Is this supposed to be a like a wand on fire or something?
Well, it's a Six of Pentacles. I guess it could be a wand on fire. I mean, it could be a weird underwater creature.
Wow, interesting.
I don't know. Are those fins or is that smoke?
It almost, to me, it kind of looks like a log, like a log that's on fire, and it's like artistic how they're choosing to kind of do it. But that would make more sense for wand symbolism, personally. But wood.
Maybe they ran out of
trees.
wands.
They come from the earth. Right. Orius, the Hierophant. Okay. Oh, interesting. Wow. Ooh, this one's curious. Okay, so wow. I mean, there's variants and there's like a number of deities that are like considered, or gods or saints or whatever, that are like wild men. They come from the woods. Saint John the Baptist is kind of like one of these guys. He wore camel fur and he lived, away from society and things like that. And these figures I'm very, very interested in right now, because a lot of times what they symbolically represent is they have wisdom from a previous age. And so a lot of times they bring this wisdom to modern peoples. They'll bring it to people who live in a city or live in a village, but they themselves are more connected to like the wilderness, but they're also more connected to like information and intelligence and wisdom from the wild as well. So I get that off the bat. The Hierophant, he's known for keeping secrets. He's interested in esoteric information and knowledge. I don't know exactly what those are in his right hand, those hooks, but the Hierophant is known for being the keeper of keys. And this is an old sort of idea that he has keys to the gates of heaven and hell, or he has keys to certain kinds of information and things like that. So the fact that he's holding them, I know they're not keys necessarily, but it makes me think of that. And then the fact that he's kind of serpentine in nature too is also like very interesting to me as well. But I just did a Hierophant card sort of breakdown, so he's sort of fresh in my mind right now. But the Hierophant definitely being someone who bestows wisdom upon people.
So here's another example of a very time period specific version, right? Where we've got
Yes.
a soldier with his arm in a sling
Wow. Uh-huh.
and a very certain sort of outfit that would date. I don't know what date
Yeah.
this would be, but
Right, right. Okay, cool. So this is the world card. Interesting. Yeah, right. I
and
mean,
more
generally,
more subjugation, right? Because he's got this griffin-esque. I know it's not a griffin necessarily, because this one's got the head of a jaguar or something.
it looks like a big cat, some kind. Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. The world card generally shows a woman, and she oftentimes has like some sort of cloth or ribbon wrapped around her, almost like she's like a tree or a pole herself, and it kind of looks symbolically almost like a serpent's wrapping around her or something along these lines. And so you generally see a woman, not a man. And sometimes lines can appear on this card because he's just one of the cherubim tetramorph angels in the corners, right? But I've never seen it really on full display like this, so that's kind of curious. And when we're talking about demonic stuff, by the way, the intention oftentimes is to distort and kind of invert and show a different, almost like the shadow side of something, right? So maybe there's some intention behind some of these choices where they're intentionally kind of putting things and twisting it a little bit for effect for whatever reason.
We've got another one here, Zagan.
Zagan. Uh-huh.
And this is definitely like a two-horned god of some kind, 4 arms, which is sort of
Right.
interesting. And then the wings are coming out of his butt.
That's what it looks like.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's a practical thing or a aesthetic design.
You know what I've noticed, by the way? And I don't know if this is entirely the case here, but notice that the 4 arms are coming from the elbows. Versus if you look at like Indian gods and they have multiple arms, the arms are coming from like the shoulders itself, where like the arm actually attaches to the body. But I've seen Western interpretations of like gods where it has multiple arms. And it's supposed to be one of these Eastern Vedic Hindu deities, and that's actually how they show the arms, almost as though, kind of like what you were saying earlier, they have never seen the original artwork, but they've just heard descriptions of it. A god with 4 arms or whatever. So to me, that's just kind of a curious sort of little detail that it's at the elbows and not actually at the shoulders.
This
4
comment
arms
says,
out of his 4 arms.
That's a good one.
Nice. That's awesome. Old World Micmac, dude. What's up, man? Always has great comments. Very insightful.
We got a little troublemaker here, a little cherubim, but there's also a hint of like these diabolic wings.
Yeah, right. A couple of different heads, it sort of looks like.
And it's like riding on a little dragon-looking creature.
Right, right. Yeah, interesting. Tells where treasures are hidden. Reveals hidden dangers. Okay, interesting. This one's new to me.
Wheel of Fortune.
Right. Very different from most Wheel of Fortune cards.
This one's unique. It's the only one that has color so far.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Interesting. That's really random. Yeah, that's very curious. Well, there is a very curious sort of thing with blood symbolism and the chariot card. So Crowley, as an example, he has a charioteer. He's wearing armor, and he's within his chariot, and he has what he says is a spinning wheel of amethyst. But there's a little bit of red inside of, a spinning cup of amethyst. And there's a little bit of red in there, and this relates to Holy Grail symbolism. So really, he's holding a gigantic grail, and there's a drop of blood in there. So one of the Holy Grail interpretations is this is the grail that caught the blood of Christ, basically, when he was being crucified. And so there's a whole deep weave between Holy Grail symbolism, the chariot card, blood, sacrifice, all of these different types of things. Lunar symbolism and moon symbolism is in the mix as well, because The Chariot card is ruled by Cancer, which is the only sign ruled by the moon. So there is that. I wonder if they're kind of alluding to that in any way. My designer's eye is going nuts because you could tell that the clip art or whatever for the blood got cut off on the right hand side there.
There's been a
so
few of those.
just,
I've seen a few
just
where you can
cropped.
see like the crop, yeah.
Yeah.
And I do assume that it's blood and not fire because it says Slayer of Men. So and it just
Right.
looks like a blood splat.
Right. So you think that's a wolf that it's riding?
I mean, sure, but it's better than I could draw as a wolf in this kind of style. So
The other interesting,
well, it's like an owl man too.
right? Yeah, Owlman looks like he's decapitating himself, riding a wolf. Pretty intense imagery. But the wolf is often associated with the moon, and so on the moon card, it's not uncommon to see dogs or wolves literally howling at the moon. And one take that I've heard within the last couple of years that I think is really interesting is that wolves don't howl at the moon in reverence. They're warning us against the moon. And that they actually are more frightened of the moon and they're trying to almost scare it away or something along these lines. That they're not doing it because they're in favor of the moon. They're doing it for the exact opposite reason, which I think is very, very interesting, actually, because I don't know if the moon is to be trusted personally.
They know it's local. That's what it is.
Right. Something.
Here we've got the Pink Panther, I assume, sneaking around, right. Investigating stuff.
Interesting. Right.
Knight of Swords, which would be an air card.
Right. Huh. What is this? It
looks like a rat.
It's like part rat. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, too.
Definitely. I mean, just the hands alone. Those are like little rat hands.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Destroys and burns all enemies when requested, speaks of the creation of the world, tells of the past and future. All right. Yeah.
All right. This is a mule peacock man bird.
Right. Interesting.
Right? That's a mule. That's a donkey.
It's possibly a donkey. I could be wrong, but is a mule a donkey and a horse?
A mule's a donkey and a horse. Yeah, they can't reproduce. So this would be maybe a donkey.
You know, the donkey would make a lot of sense. Let's read the description real quick. Donkey symbolism is interesting to me. Teaches geometry and measurements, increases one's intelligence, can transform a person into a bird. Okay, yeah. The donkey, you know, Set corresponds with the donkey, and I did a few episodes on Set, the meaning of Set, the northern correspondence that associates with Set, like some of the earliest images of Christ being crucified, basically, or like a savior being crucified. It's actually a donkey head. I don't know if you've seen those illustrations before. But the donkey is a fascinating creature. And so I generally think of Set, and then Set, I think of like, it's not too far off, but like Satan, and we're talking about the peacock symbolism from earlier and things like that. But the donkey, you know, it's a very calm creature. I've heard that it's nice to have donkeys around the farm to keep all of the other animals calm, and that's like their thing, and that they remember really, really well. And so they'll remember. My uncle has a couple of donkeys, and he'll say that like they're the best alarm systems. They'll recognize familiar cars if they're coming, or familiar people, and if they're not familiar, then they'll kind of like raise hell, sort of thing. And then Christ rode a donkey, and there's even like you look at donkeys and they have a cross on their back. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but their fur kind of creates like this like pattern cowlick sort of thing on their back. And so they literally have like just a cross, you know, on their back. It's really obvious. But the donkey's kind of sneaky. There's a sneaky amount of like occult symbolism and gods that were associated with it. That, you know, previous to a couple years ago, I really didn't pay too much attention to, but now I try and pay attention to it because it's a cool animal.
Now, we're almost through this one. We got maybe 10 or 12 left.
Cool.
This is the Four of Swords, and I don't know what I'm looking at now either. He looks like he's wearing a ski mask. It's obviously chainmail head to toe, even on the horse.
Right.
And that is is it a bident?
Bident? Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. What does the description say down below? Teaches grammar, logic, and rhetoric, can make one appear like a soldier. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Interesting.
Covered in head to toe. Right.
A unicorn, right? That's a unicorn.
Looks like it. Oh, interesting. Wow. What card is this supposed to be? Nine of
Nine of
Pentacles.
Pentacles. Amdusius.
Interesting. Causes any manner of music to be played. Causes trees to bend at will. Brings excellent familiars. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a huge head for the body too.
Belial, everyone's favorite. Balal? How do you pronounce it? I don't know.
I think maybe the first one, Belial. So
Judgment.
okay. Distributes promotions and high offices. Causes one to be liked. Okay. Gotcha. Interesting.
So suck up to this guy if you see him at the office. That's the guy that you want to put in a good word for you.
Right. Ooh. Knight of Pentacles.
Decarbia. This is the decarb. You stick your finger right there, let the smoke go through.
Right. Interesting. Oh, you know what? I'm seeing that I could be it's scales. Right. Okay. So like I said, one parallel with the scales is the sword. So definitely, like I said, Lady Justice holds a sword in one hand, the scales in the other hand. And so that's kind of interesting. Judgment, balance. I'm thinking of balance. That's what the scales do too. It's related to adjustment or balance. And so this character is balancing, on two fingers, basically. So there is symbolism here related to balance. And then obviously you got that sun right there in the middle too. That's interesting. I'd have to think about this one a little more.
Six of Swords is a seer.
Okay.
And again, we've got a Pegasus symbolism, I'm assuming. I mean, the freaking silhouette, that's Pegasus.
Right, yeah, Pegasus, and then I'm assuming it's Perseus with the head of Medusa.
Yep, it's a Gorgon head, I assume. Yeah, you can kind of see little, like, snake heads poking out.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Travels the world over in an instant and brings anything anywhere. Gives the truth about thefts and hidden treasures, willing to do anything one commands.
So
nice,
basically,
cool.
like a DoorDash driver that doesn't steal your stuff.
Right. I always notice that so many older illustrations of things riding other things, they're looking back. This is kind of like a thing that I've noticed, or even always if they're looking backwards, that's just something to kind of take note. I'm just looking at that over here, that he's looking behind him. So there's something to be said about that.
Well, here's more Janus symbolism in a way.
Oh, yeah.
But this one we've got the sun male, and then we've got the moon female, right?
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
High priestess.
Okay. Yeah, that's usually the second card. So there's always like twin pillars in that card. She kind of operates as like the middle way. Whenever you see sort of hybrid or androgynous figures like this, they're split in the middle. There's always an implied middle way, middle path, third way, original way sort of thing with it, So I always see that with these sort of figures. And what I would say personally too is I associate a lot of this stuff with Mercury, and Thoth was a lunar deity, so very much associated with the crescent moon. I see Mercury as having like a lunar expression, a solar expression, then also what I call a polar expression. And so I see these types of figures in Janus and whatever kind of coming out of like the same sort of soup or whatnot. But I've seen this illustration before. I didn't know where it came from, but I think it's cool. I think it's awesome.
Andromelius. And he's got, dude, I've never someone dual wielding two different Caduceus. That's like, what's he doing with two? I thought you were limited to like one. I didn't know you were allowed to have two.
Right. This original illustration, there's actually two people beside him. And what he oftentimes represents is, again, this middle way, this sort of middle path kind of concept or dynamic, right? And so he's almost symbolically in between two pillars. You see two pillars, there is an implied throughway, there's an implied third pillar or first pillar, whatever you want to refer to it as. But in the original illustration, there's a man with a baton or a club, and he's beating a dragon. And then on the other side, there's a woman also beating a dragon. She's lunar, he's solar, and they're beating this dragon up, these two dragons. And to me, I see this as another symbol of them kind of like trying to stomp out a previous age, a previous era. You know, I think the dragon and the serpent were kind of used this way, you know, and so modern peoples were kind of at war with some of these older gods, and Mercury's just right there in the middle, holding these two caduceuses. And so he's really kind of the synthesis of lunar and solar. I look at him as actually a polar god. That I think if you see three pillars, oftentimes one is lunar, one is solar, and the middle one is actually polar, which predates the other two by my estimation. But yeah, I love this illustration though.
These are interesting. I just noticed. I don't think any other cards. Did they run out of ink? These are red at the top. All the other ones are in black. So okay. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, you know what? These are all like high demons, I assume. Beelzebub, Lucifer, Moloch, Azazel. That's one I'm not familiar with, and Baphomet. So I guess that's what it stands for. So Beelzebub being Lord of the Flies. Right. And I've heard this in a few different ways too, but it was also supposed to be an insult, like Lord of the Dookie, because everywhere he goes.
Right, yeah, exactly. Makes manifest the apparitions of demons, sets demons upon men to destroy them with vices. Yeah, fly symbolism is really interesting. There's some decks that I have where the devil has a fly like right there, you know, in the middle of his forehead or something like that. Associated with the moon, that's interesting too. Yeah, the moon is so mysterious. Like I think not that long ago. I don't know if I can trust it, to be honest with you. There's so many bizarre things with the moon that I just don't know if we have the full story about it. So
I mean, if my dog doesn't trust it, I don't trust it. This is interesting. I don't think I've ever seen this particular depiction of Lucifer. Wow. It's like a child angel sitting on a bunch of skulls.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I never have either. Provides liberation and illumination, incites jealousy and envy. Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting illustration there.
Death card.
Yeah, right. Totally. I mean, yeah, death, rebirth, two sides of the same coin, basically. So,
and you promise that these aren't summoning demons by going through these, right?
You know what? For you, I'll promise. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's easy for you to say. You're not even the same zip code as me.
Moloch the devil. Okay, gotcha.
This is a cute Moloch. This is like Elmer from like the Elmer's glue. Look at it's like a happy cow.
Yeah, he has big old eyes.
Right?
Right, yeah.
I've never seen a Moloch that looked so enticing. Usually they're these like big brass, brazen bowls that you throw your children into. This is like you would bring your kid to have a picture taken at the mall with this guy.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly. That's interesting, man. I'm just noticing the like sperm cells on his sort of cloak there. That's what I see when you zoom in there.
Let's see if I got a couple ways I can zoom. Let's see.
Are you seeing those? Looks kind of like it's pretty obvious that that's what's happening, and they're going towards him. They're actually swimming towards him. So there's an implied, he's like receiving energy, or he's receiving souls, or something along those lines.
And it would make sense, right? Because Moloch and horned gods and cows all represent agriculture, right? Like regeneration.
Right. Yeah, for sure. The sacrificial dynamic definitely makes sense with that.
Azazel.
Okay.
This is the Ace of Wands.
Ace of Wands. Yeah, I was gonna say he looks very he kind of looks Pan-like, and then he's right there with that goat too, which makes a lot of sense. He's got that trident there, and it looks like he has a banner with a frog. Yeah, that's what I kind of see at least. Do you see a frog there?
I think so.
It looks like a frog standing on its
Yeah, it
legs.
kind of does look like a frog, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things, because there's been a couple of frogs here, frogs symbolically being leapers to other domains, other realms, other dimensions. I think that's what Kenneth Grant said about the frog, is that it kind of is like symbolically it jumps to, other places basically, which I think is kind of interesting. So I don't know if that's what's being implied here, but
This is a weird one just because it's so different from any other of the designs so far,
oh man, yeah,
right?
to
This is
say
a
the least, right?
total outlier.
Wow. I mean, this reminds me a lot of the full card, actually.
Oops. There you go.
Right. Interesting. The Fool has a huge symbolic relationship with the Jester, and also the modern clown. And so I kind of see that the fact that he's holding a sack too, it's implying that he's traveling or he's bringing that from point A to point B. And so the Fool once again always has his sack with him. Generally, the Fool always carries a walking stick or a staff, but here he's holding kind of like a hoop or something like that. And then its hind legs, right? It kind of looks like that could potentially be like donkey legs. Sometimes older jesters actually literally have donkey ears, which kind of goes back to what I was saying about some of the symbolism related to the donkey. And then I don't know what its tail is supposed to be, but yeah, this is a curious one.
And then the Big Daddy.
The Big Daddy. Yeah, that's right. This is actually one of the cards that made me want to look at this deck because I saw it online and I was like, oh, Baphomet's a perfect correspondence for the Magician, in my opinion. And so the Magician always has his wand. He's pointing to the heavens. He has one hand pointing down to the earth, right? So very similar to this posture. What I see with the Magician when he's making this posture is that he's basically saying, I connect the above and the below, and I separate the above and the below. Symbolically, I see this as him saying that I am the central pillar in the house of God. The Hebrew letter that corresponds with the Magician is Beth, which means house. And the deeper sort of implication of that is the house of God. And this goes back to this old idea that heaven and earth were once fused together, and it wasn't until there was a symbolic pole or pillar or tree that actually separated heaven and earth and gave space for everything to be and exist. The Magician generally has a table of elements before him. There's usually a table with a wand, a cup, a sword, and then a pentacle representing the four elements. So now with this pillar existing, what I refer to as the world axis, basically, now there's actually space for things to actually occur here. So there's some groups where they actually have a central pole in the middle of their temple, right? And so the Magician, he's basically acting as that central pole, that sort of point of pivot. He's basically acting as the central pillar in the cosmos, I would say, the cosmic sort of pillar or the cosmic sort of tree. And the Magician has a correspondence with Mercury. And so this divine androgyne sort of idea obviously parallels everything that's going on here, with Baphomet. So in a lot of different ways, I see this as being like a perfect sort of fit. And then even you look in the lap of Baphomet, and then you also have that Caduceus, right? There's some modern versions of Baphomet where you don't see a pole like that, but you actually just literally see an erection. And so but this symbol right here, very, very mercurial. And as I said earlier too, Thoth, the Egyptian Thoth, the correspondence or expression for like Hermes, Mercury, is a lunar deity. And then you also see two crescent moons here, the lighter one up top and then the darker one down below. But yeah, I still love this illustration. I mean, there is a lot of like things to take away from it.
And I believe this particular illustration of Baphomet is from Eliphas Levi's History of Magic.
Yeah, yep, exactly right.
Where are you on? I don't know I don't know where this came from, but the claim that the Baphomet, as it was claimed to have been worshipped by the Knights Templar, but it was just a mispronunciation of Muhammad, that it used to be Mahomet, and somehow that got translated into Baphomet, but it was really them worshiping Muhammad. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I've heard that before. I've heard too, kind of it could potentially be related, but that Baphomet was a just title. And so what I've heard is that Baphomet was, and a lot of this work comes from Tracy Twyman. She wrote a couple of excellent books on Baphomet. And one of the things that she basically says is that oracular skulls, so you have a skull and you use it for divination purposes, that was once referred to as Baphomet. And so the idea was that, if I'm not mistaken, that the Knights Templars supposedly had the skull of Saint John the Baptist, and that skull was their oracular divination sort of tool. But that Baphomet, the title, could be given to any number of oracular skulls. So, yeah, I'm sure you've heard this before too. But
It's
Skull
also
and
a plot line
Crossbones.
in The Invisibles by, I want to say, Grant Morrison.
Oh, is that
Where
right?
like one of the characters is that they go back in time and they steal the head of St. John the Baptist, and he kind of like tells them where to go. He's kind of like their Penny in Inspector Gadget.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha. They also say that the Skull and Bones, right, having the head of Geronimo, right? And so I've heard this before, for sure. What's the real storyline, or what's like the real deal? I can't really say. I don't really know, but I have heard what you're mentioning there with Muhammad.
So this was the Occult Tarot
Nice.
by Travis McHenry. How are we doing for time? We're an hour and 20 minutes in.
We're good,
Should we
man.
do another one? Okay.
If you want to do another one, I'm down for that. If you want to do it another time, I'm good with whatever you want to do, man.
How about this? Pick which one of these two, and we'll do the other one together too. But in the effort of time, so this isn't a 4-hour stream. Which of these two
Totally.
would you like to go into the most?
I'm really curious about mystical medleys, but I think that that's going to require a little bit more time. So for time's sake, I say let's go with the pot tarot because it seems to be fairly minimal.
Okay, so rain check on mystical melodies, and medleys, and I agree with you. This one probably is going to have a lot more symbolism that we can analyze in detail.
For
so
sure.
this will be a good one to go into more.
Cool.
So, all right, the pot tarot. If you've got kids, get them out of the room because this is the gateway. This is gateways to two different vices, right? We're gonna maybe
Definitely.
summon demons, and you're gonna get addicted to drugs.
Right. Yeah, you actually had a couple of different cannabis-themed tarot decks that you sent me, but this one
there
looked
was
more
a
interesting to
420
me.
tarot. There was a mushroom tarot, which I'm kind of excited about.
Right.
This is interesting. The backs of these are pretty plain, and it just has like a little pot leaves in the corners. I don't know if you can make those out.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if this is a real tarot card, the Ace of Bongs.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so I'm assuming I'm
you say
guessing
wand?
bongs
Cup?
would be, I don't know. I was just going to say that. I'm thinking probably water because obviously bongs require water. So I'm thinking that could be the case. So Ace of Cups. You always see the hand coming from like the ether or the heavens holding whatever it is, the wand or the sword or something like that. So they're keeping in that tradition, but it's with bongs. So that's funny. And actually, for what it's worth, too, I like the illustration style. It's clean, but it looks kind of like, I don't know. It looks good.
So right now we're gonna be taking bets on if bongs are wands or if bongs are cups. Right? It sounds like those are the options.
So the two of bongs.
I guess this is the two. Oh, that makes sense. The two of bongs has got two bongs.
Yeah. I bet it's
I don't know how much symbolism there is derived from this. Maybe the triangles and the little squiggles or snake symbolism or not. Maybe it's
there's a unifying sort of thing with cup symbolism, being containers, bringing things together. And then you have the crossed arms. So it is kind of like there's like a camaraderie sort of element, a social dynamic.
And they're clearly at like a party because that would be confetti.
Right.
The three of bongs.
Three of bongs, yeah.
This is an interesting one because you've got one from the sky that's like dropping down buds to all the ones down here.
Oh, that's really funny. So this is a play on the classic Rider-Waite. And so the Four of Cups, I think what they're showing, if I'm not mistaken, is there's a guy who's kind of he's sad and he's up against a tree and he's not paying attention to anything around him. He's kind of like he just looks like he's looking at the ground or something. And so he's like not seeing the opportunities that are around him. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but that's kind of, it's a play on this card right here. And so I think that's hilarious, but it's just bongs. And so they kind of turned the figure into a bong as well.
That's awesome. That's why you're here, man. I wouldn't have ever put that together.
Right. That's really funny.
All right. The 5 of bongs, now they're all sad. They're like broken and tipped over and cracked and leaking.
The 5 cards in the tarot generally represent some sort of struggle or setback. There's a really interesting reason behind that, actually, as it relates to the number 5. But what you see is cups that are kind of spilled over and things like that. So I'm not surprised that they would have this.
This
take,
one's actually
it's doing
a damn good job, man. For the simple theme, it's actually kind of nailing the symbolism.
It is, yeah, definitely.
All right, 6. I'm assuming this is a rebirth kind of aspect.
The 6th card generally is like overcoming the obstacle of the 5. So yeah, absolutely right. So it's contrasting energy for sure compared to what just came before it.
Okay, now we're at the 7, and we've elevated into the heavens.
This is funny, man. Yeah, right. So generally with this card, what you see is a man, and he's looking at these clouds, and there's 7 cups, and each cup has its like own sort of like. It almost looks like they look like apparitions, or they look like dreams or premonitions or something like that. I always see it as like nightmares. And so he's looking at these 7 cups, and they all have different things. One has like a serpent in it. Another one has like a castle. Another one has like what looks like a ghost or something like that, or like a woman. And so he's kind of like struck, I think, with these sort of different options or these different things kind of swimming around in his mind or whatever. So they kind of have just a different take. So what I'm noticing is that they're not including the actual figures themselves, but they're just including, the bongs.
All right, we got to request a shuffle. Although I kind of like seeing how they're slowly building on each other. Maybe
right.
in one
Yeah,
of the
I kind of like that
shuffle
too.
A little bit.
Right. So this would be the 8 of cups. Right. Okay. Well, so this has to do. There's generally a man walking away from something, and he's walking away from these cups. So they're implying the journey ahead. They're implying leaving the current situation and kind of like maybe finding or searching for greener pastures or something. So that makes sense.
I'm impressed so far on this one.
Me too, actually.
Okay. Well, what am I looking at? I mean, I know what I'm looking at visually, but what's the progression here?
Interesting. Okay, so this would be the 9. This is very different from what is generally the thing. Usually you see a man and there's 9 cups behind him, and it's almost like he's a merchant. You're almost like looking at his wares at like a bazaar or something along a marketplace or something. So this is a very, very different take, but they are emphasizing what you use bongs for. So they're showing you the flower there. So that so the merchant aspect, I don't know, could be somehow there.
Well,
but
I would say that every other card we've seen so far has just been kind of the bong in its natural habitat in some ways, but now we're at the plug because we got little buds. And we got leaves,
there you go.
So we're at the plug's house now.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yep.
All right. And then we've got, they're all ascending through a rainbow into the sky.
Totally. So generally what you see is a family of 4, and they're kind of like celebrating. It's almost like they've gone through some ordeal or some sort of situation, and that they've overcome, whatever obstacle that they just went through. And the rainbow itself, a lot of times it represents endings pretty much. And so it's like the end of a storm or something along these lines. So symbolically it represents endings and then also new beginnings. But once again, they're just not showing the figures. But yeah, it's pretty classic to have a rainbow in this card.
All right, yeah, we got request. We'll do a card pull at the very end of this.
Cool.
We'll do a card pull.
Yeah.
The page of bongs, or the jack of bongs, or the jack of cups, or the cups are clubs. What are cups when you go to like a regular deck of cards?
Oh, the cups, water, right? So we're still dealing with water symbolism. So we're dealing with bongs.
But I mean, in like a traditional playing
like a
card
playing.
deck.
Oh, Yeah, that's a good question. I always get that confused. So I think clubs would actually be wands, diamonds would be air, which would be swords, hearts would be cups and water. So this would be the hearts. So Jack of Hearts, I guess you can say. Yeah, right. I mean, so generally what you see is you see a page and he's at the beach and he's kind of holding his cup awkwardly and things like that. And oftentimes, actually, I'm pretty sure that cup usually has like a fish in it too. So there's
Okay,
that
water
fish right
heart.
there.
That's what everyone says. Water's
Yep.
heart.
Yep, totally.
The Knight of Bongs. This is what you tell your grandma what it's for when she comes by. You're like, it's a vase, grandma. You put flowers in it.
Right. I mean, looks like it's good to go. You got that flower loaded up and everything else. Interesting. Usually knights imply some sort of like movement or something like that, but there is kind of a graduated sort of thing going on here with the flowers and whatnot. And then this should be the queen. Yep, queen of bongs. So a lady sparking it up makes sense to me. Once again, no people but hands.
Rosicrucian bong reps. The King of
King
Bongs.
of Bongs. There you go. That's cool. That makes sense. Just having that crown there. So I like that.
The Ace of Buds.
So I'm assuming buds would be earth, potentially, or fire. I don't know. We'll see.
Or I was thinking swords or air, because it kind of looks like a little sword and you've got air for smoke. I don't know. I guess
Potentially.
Okay, we've got on a scale. So the 2 is does this give you any hints as to what buds would be if we see the 2 as a scale?
Yeah, I'm inclined to think actually swords here now. Oh, you know what though? I think it's actually it's going to be pentacles, probably would be my guess. Yeah, because the 2 of Pentacles is always about it's called change, and it's always about a balancing act sort of thing. So that's my sort of interpretation. So then
we've got the 3 of Buds, which has 3 buds, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, totally. So this would be works. At least that's what it's called in like the Thoth deck. And so you're about to put in some work. So that weed needs to be ground up, and then you need to roll it. And so there's work to be done.
Awesome. That's so awesome, man. These ones are nailing it.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the I have a roommate card.
That's really funny. So generally what you see here is a man with pentacles, and he's holding one on his chest. He has his feet on a couple, then he has one on his crown, and then in the Thoth deck it's actually like a fortress. So there is kind of like taking care of like your possessions. There's a dynamic of like valuing like what you have and kind of honoring it, and protection basically. So yeah, the protecting your weed, that makes total sense.
Oh no. Just like you said, what the 5 is always sort of a struggle, so
Yep,
these are the buds that are dead.
Totally. So what you generally see here, you see a couple, and one of the man generally has like crutches, and he's like bandaged up. He's clearly hurt, and they're walking outside, and it looks like it's like hailing or snowing or something, and they're in front of a church. So there's like a poverty sort of dynamic going on here. And so yeah, I could see, with your crops, if they're not,
and we've got
well,
overcast, the sky's kind of purple, overcast, so there's no sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like the same deprivation sort of aspect.
Totally. So this one should be much nicer looking coming up.
I'm guessing that this is like Jachin and Boaz, right? These are the 2 pillars.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that for sure. The traditional artwork is way different, so this one might take a second for me to kind of see what they're going for here. But you generally see a man, and he's holding scales, and he is actually giving money to the less fortunate. And so I always see this as kind of like almost like, the people down below, they're like beggars basically. They're receiving, coins from this guy. And then it's like that guy also, like, he receives his coins from something else above him. He's just at another part of the hierarchy or ladder or whatever you want to say. So there's always like a flow of money sort of dynamic that I always see, with that card. But also too, it's like a gift from the heavens. So maybe that's partly what they're trying to say here. It's almost like these are gifts from the gods or something like that, from on high, from a higher source.
Super high source.
Right.
So here's the 7.
So the 7, usually it's a guy looking at his crops, and his crops are like overgrown. And so there's a whole dynamic that he's resting on his laurels. But here, I don't get the sort of implication that they're overgrown or that there's a lot to do. I could be wrong, but usually it's a guy, he's like resting on his shovel or his hoe or something like that.
So now we are cutting them off or trimming them buds.
Right. So you usually see a guy and he's creating pentacles. So he actually has like a chisel, and it's him by himself. And a lot of times, or in the esoteric decks, like the Crowley deck, this is called Prudence. And it's like taking care of like your business, I would say, in a lot of ways. And it's kind of like I think there's like a tortoise versus hare sort of dynamic of like slow and steady. Usually a lot of cards kind of like imply that, honest work kind of comes to mind and things like that. So I can see why this would make sense. So 9 of Pentacles. Oh yeah, I think that's there's usually an old man, or so, no, excuse me. So, this is a very different take. So I was thinking of the 10 of Pentacles. The 9 of Pentacles, it's a woman, and she usually holds a falcon in one hand, and she's like in a secret garden. And there's all of these ideas about her kind of liking her own company and being comfortable with herself and not necessarily needing to like have to like impress other people. And there's a whole, to me, there's like a solitary sort of thing with that card, but this is a very, very different take. So you don't see anything kind of related to the original artwork that most people associate with it.
This is the 10, and I just want to know that it's not upside down. This is the right way up because they are basically curing these guys, right?
Yes,
they got them clipped
right, yeah.
upside down.
Totally. Interesting. It's almost like he's putting it's almost like you're putting something away for, the future, and that actually is a dynamic that is related to this card. There's a lot of things having to do with like generational wealth, actually, with this card. A lot of times you see a man sitting down and there's people outside of his doorway. I kind of look at that as like a younger generation. But I think of him kind of bestowing wisdom and wealth to like the newer generations, basically. So in that way, I can kind of see it like as like saving for the future sort of thing, or something related to that, basically.
Page of Buds, and we're pretty set that this is definitely Pentacles at this point, right?
Oh yeah, it's 100% Pentacles. Yeah, Page of Buds. Yeah, I mean the newness, right? So just getting started. So this is a start growing indoors, obviously, before probably going outdoors. So yeah, I could see that making sense. Just starting its journey.
Right,
Nine of Buds, yeah,
growing a little bit more.
It's growing a little bit more. Yeah, exactly.
And I assume now we're outside, maybe.
Yep, right.
The Queen of Buds.
Queen of Buds. Interesting. I mean, queen symbolism, very much related to Venusian symbolism, feminine symbolism, so love symbolism and all of that. It's a unifying sort of thing. So I could see that making sense. It's a little different, but I'm good with it.
King of Buds. This one's pretty easy.
Once
you
again.
Just slap a freaking crown on it, and you're good to go.
It's not a bad idea, actually. Yeah, totally. So that makes sense.
All right, Ace of Pipes. What are we guessing? We've only got 2 more suits left to really.
I'm thinking this is air.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my opinion. So Ace of Pipes. Yeah, once again, the hand coming from the ether, right? With that pipe there. So pretty straightforward. Okay, so this would be the 2 of Swords, I'm assuming. Generally, you see a woman and she's sitting on like a bench in front of the ocean, and she has crossed arms and she's holding a sword in each hand, making a large X. This is a bit different, but because this is, these are emblematic kind of the swords, it would make sense that there are two of them. I would have done something crossed, maybe, perhaps. But and then also holding two at once, people don't generally do that. But I could kind of see what they're going for here a little bit. Oh yeah, definitely. This is confirmation that we're in.
So yeah, because this is the Three of Swords, right?
This is the Three of Swords. Yeah. In the Thoth deck, it's called Sorrow. So it kind of looks like three elongated, I guess, like bong pipes.
Yeah, something. I'm at a loss of what we're actually looking at here. I mean, clearly it's glass. Maybe this is when they first start blowing the glass before it turns into anything.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. You know what's amazing, man? Just kind of thinking out loud. It's like the first version of this card where you see three swords in a heart comes from the Solabusca. And the Solabusca is from the 15th century. And so there's actually there was centuries where nobody did an illustrated minor arcana. It was very different. You've probably seen the minor arcanas where it's like more abstract and they kind of just show like 7 pentacles, but there's like no artistic sort of thing going on. They're not trying to create a scene or anything else like that. But the first version of this card came from that long ago, and now we have pot versions of it in 2024. So just to see like how long this art has existed and how many expressions it's had over time, it's pretty wild.
The 4, and I don't know, it might be hard to tell out, but there's a bunch of Z's up here, like you're going to sleep or something.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so 4 of Swords. What do you generally see in the 4 of Swords? I need a reminder on that one.
And I don't know if it's just a design choice, but all 4 of these are like different strains, I'd assume, because they're different colors.
Well, you're gonna like this. So the Z's, there you go, man. And he's laying down. There's 4 swords above him. There you go. Sorry, 3 swords above him. 1 kind of like on his bed. It almost kind of looks like a crypt. If I'm not mistaken, this card is sometimes referred to as peace. And so definitely he looks like he's kind of at peace right now, right? So anyway, so the Z sort of thing, they're really taking that and kind of running with it, I would say.
Maybe this is a stretch, but these also, unlike all the other spoon type bowls so far, these kind of look like peace pipes.
Yes, that's true too. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
Oh, now we've got all sorts of. We've got. I don't know if I know the names of all these anymore, but we've got a Sherlock. We've got a. Is that a hitter or a?
Yeah, I don't know the name. Yeah, then you got a bubbler. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So generally, what you see here is there's like a foreground background dynamic where a guy in the foreground is holding some of the swords. He's looking behind him, and there's people who clearly just went through some sort of loss, and they're kind of mourning that loss symbolically. And so I always kind of interpret this card as the victor is almost regretful, or he's feeling a certain kind of way about actually being the winner in this circumstance. So there's like a conflicted sort of dynamic between him actually being the winner and then how he's feeling about the people that he just won against. That's just like a very quick sort of take. But the swords are kind of all over the place. So there is kind of like a confusion sort of aspect here. So there's like kind of like a lack of harmony, in a way with this card. And then also I think maybe a little bit with what they're trying to do here.
And good call, Nicholas. The one on top, that is a steamroller. You're right. That's a steamroller.
Gotcha.
I haven't seen one of these since like the 90s. Okay, interesting. The 6, okay. They're being boxed up for sale, it looks like. Is this like another merchant sort of theme?
Usually what do you usually see in the 6? I'm having to look through these now to refresh my memory of what the 6 is. Off the top of my head, I'm kind of at a loss. So let me just see real quick what I have here. I know it's somewhere near. So the 666.
And a couple of people have commented on the color scheme as well, maybe being tied to Rider Waite. I wouldn't know nearly enough to make any of those connections, but it is cool that this deck does have way more consistency in the theme and colors and everything.
Totally. Okay, so oh my goodness, this is so funny. So the Six of Swords, yeah, it usually depicts a guy in a boat and he's leaving. And they're leaving like a situation or a dynamic, some sort of circumstance. In the
So
boat,
the box
you
is the
have
boat.
the box is the boat, exactly. In the boat, you usually have a woman and what looks like a small child, and then the six swords are actually like within the boat. And I always see this as, so the sword is good for letting go of things. So that's what the sword is kind of designed for. I've heard in like ritual magic sort of situations, it diffuses bad energy. You can let go of something. Again, it's meant to sever connections and pierce things and cut things. So there's always this letting go sort of dynamic. So yeah, they're letting go of these pieces here, and they're gonna live a different life. And so they're moving on. So that's what that card represents. Moving on, but in a very positive way, in my opinion. It's in a necessary sort of way.
This one, I don't know what to think about it. I don't know why they've got a bag with the pipes in it, but they're packed. This is so weird. And then the ones that are not in the bag are not packed. So there's 2 outside the bag.
Wow.
And there's 5 inside the bag. What the hell does any of this mean?
Okay, so this one is generally a man sneaking off with 7 swords, and he is stealing them. It's the card that always relates to. I always look at it as like a lot of people say it's like the card for cheaters. Like if someone's cheating on you, this is the card that's going to come up. Or if someone's hiding something from you, that's the card that's going to come up. And so there is this element of trying to get away with something. I see it as like internal. I tend to internalize the tarot when I do readings and stuff for people. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like, is someone trying to get away with something here, or trying to like
one of the
sneak
comments
away?
here, Tiger Lily says maybe these 2 are getting stolen because they're outside the bag and they're empty.
Yeah, that would be the implication. I mean, that would make more sense for sure. So
This is an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. Theft is definitely a huge part of that card.
Okay, now we've got like the Papa Homer Simpson on the couch
Right.
and all the baby pipes.
Yeah, exactly. This is very different too. Oh my goodness. Okay, so generally with the 8 of Swords, you see a woman. She's at the beach. She is wrapped and bound. She's blindfolded, and there's all of these swords sticking in the dirt or in the sand around her. I always look at this personally as this woman. The one thing she needs to escape, she has all around her. She has these different blades, these different swords. So I always look at it like, if you're in a predicament or a situation, sometimes the solution is actually much closer than you realize. It literally could be within arm's reach, something along those lines. And so as it relates to this setup here, obviously it looks like that would be like the Papa pipe, on the couch with his kids or something like that. But you know what I can see actually, that maybe what they were going for is that he is being bound by his circumstances. He's being bound with him having all of these kids, and so he doesn't have sort of any other choice but to take care of his flock there. But so it's almost like kind of like a prison sort of thing or something. That's kind of potentially what I see. I don't know what you see.
Well, this is probably reading into it because I didn't see any stars on the card you just showed, but there are 8 different 6-pointed stars if you look at the buttons on the couch as they're kind of pressed in. But they all have like a very specific like 6-pointed star pattern.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So I see this as kind of like that this is what in the eyes maybe of the creators is that he is he's bound to his circumstance. So he has to stay home. He can't go anywhere.
9 is this weird progression from a completely, or maybe it starts up here. You've got a pristine, and these are all the steamrollers, and then you get a small crack, and then it's more cracked, and then it just progressively gets worse and worse. And also the bud is disappearing.
Oh,
from
good
all
call.
these.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Oh man, that last one looks really sad. Yeah, so usually this card will show a woman in bed and she has her head in her hands and she can't sleep, and there's the 9 swords on the wall behind her. And so definitely struggle, huge card related to her thinking about whatever situation she just went through, or whatever kind of loss maybe that she just went through, and maybe the part that she played in that, and so she's having a restless night for sure. So
Right, and she's out of bud. She can't sleep.
she's out of bed. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it got even worse.
Yeah, it doesn't get better. Generally, you see a guy on the beach and he has 9 swords sticking in his back, basically. So this is like the end. This is finality, right? So this is, the true ending of something and the beginning of another sort of chapter. So in actuality, there is some positivity to it. I don't see that there's really any negative cards in the deck, personally.
Page of Pipes. This is the
People's
true
first
OG.
pipe here. Yeah, exactly.
But, well, yeah, the next step beyond this is you just pack it into the back of your hand and try not to burn yourself.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, I don't think I've ever smoked from an apple before, personally.
Oh, you're missing out, man. Core
Yeah.
lifetime experience.
Yeah, I should give it a go. It's probably because I didn't really smoke until I was like in my mid to late 20s, so I never had.
Well,
the
yeah,
high
you could
school-
afford to just go get a proper device at that point. This was like a after school special. Like no
Right.
one too young to get any sort of like rolling, or so I
Right.
hear. This is what
Right.
I've heard.
Right. Yeah, totally. So this, or like a can or a bottle or something would suffice,
Okay,
right?
so
But
I want to know what do you graduate from, an apple to a what? We're about to find out.
I would think it would just be like a probably like some sort of pipe or something,
I'm gonna say tin foil or a can.
Mm.
Let's see. Oh, okay.
Nope.
Well, it's a little like all-in-one sort of device here.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And
So
the knight,
certainly an
maybe
upgrade.
because it's like ironclad, right? Like it's got metal
Right.
on it.
Totally. Yeah, I've never had one of these guys before, but yeah, I could see that evolution.
We've advanced in 2024. I don't think you should be smoking out of metal. I'm just gonna say it.
All right. Queen of Pipes. Yep, there you go. Showing a lady.
Just doing the work.
Yep. Just packing one up.
Again, you just throw a freaking crown and you're good to go.
There you go. Yep. And then
King of Pipes.
sort of the Sherlock pipe or whatever they call it. Or no, kind of like a Gandalf pipe or something.
Yeah, that's a Gandalf for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we're on the last set, I believe, or at
Okay,
least
so-
of the minor, right?
So definitely fire, right? And so that makes sense. Joints, kind of looking symbolically a little bit like wands.
What about the hand gesture? Anything to that?
Interesting. I mean, definitely the
It's
two
it's
fingers.
kind of like my fingers are huge on here, but it's kind of like the peace sign,
Yeah, kind of like the peace sign, right?
like
Yeah.
the Jesus peace sign.
Right. Yep. Totally. Sometimes it's not uncommon to see that in a number of cards. The Hierophant is one card that you'll see that all the time, for sure. Okay, so 2 of Wands here. Generally, you see a man. Yeah, that makes sense with the paper airplane, actually. You see him holding one wand. He's in between 2 wands. It's kind of like a doorway or an opening. It's not uncommon for him to be holding a globe. And so he's kind of, I think he's thinking about sort of his next adventure. He's planning sort of his next trip or something along these lines. So travel is definitely an implication. He's about to walk through that doorway. He's not quite there yet. But that's usually what you see. And so the paper airplane obviously implying that sort of journey ahead as well.
The
And
three, we're
so,
just rolling 3 joints.
yeah, this card is kind of similar, except you see a man with 3 wands sticking in the ground. He's usually holding on to one of them, and he's looking out over like a river. And I think that similarly, he's kind of like thinking about the journey ahead, and he's staying back symbolically because there's things to kind of tend to a little bit. And so oftentimes he looks kind of like he maybe is someone who is like not rich, and so he has like clothes that are kind of like disheveled looking. And so I think that kind of the work sort of dynamic comes to mind a little bit with this one too, meaning that you have some work to do. You've started, but there's still more to accomplish, and so with this right here, you still have to roll those papers.
Now it's time to party because they've got them rolled.
Right. Yeah, this one's always very celebratory. And so it's almost like you're being invited to the party. So there's always like 4 wands sticking out of the ground. And there's usually a canopy kind of like that you see at the top and the bottom there. And so it's definitely a social sort of card in a lot of ways. Lots of merriment. Oh, right. The 5 of wands. So here's the struggle. Generally, you see a number of people, 5 people, fighting each other with wands. And so all of the wands are kind of pointed all over the place. And so, again, with the tarot, if you see classic decks and the wands or the swords are like scattered and there's no sort of discernible pattern, confusion, chaos, things like that. And so there's usually it kind of feels like something of like a scrimmage or a battle or something like that. But that's the struggle. So there you go. Rolling the perfect joint, that can be a struggle.
Yeah, this one's almost like machine rolled. Maybe not.
Yeah,
I guess
it
you
looks
can
like
you can do it by hand.
right. But no, yeah, you're
Kind
right,
of funny.
John.
I think we've all seen every iteration of these, but this one's like uneven. It probably is gonna like break down right here in the middle. That one's like you got to freaking light it halfway in. I like this one.
I love seeing people's rolling styles, and I love just getting joints from other people, and just seeing how they do it, and all of the different sort of like techniques and everything else. It's honestly, it's like one of my favorite things. What do yours look like usually, or how do you like to smoke usually?
Well, funny you should ask. Something like this. One of these.
Okay.
I do big behemoth guys. Sometimes I'll stick 2 of those together, and they probably end up looking a little bit like this banana boat, dude.
Right on.
Bursting at the seams.
Nice.
All right. What
6.
is this? The 6. It almost looks like it would be like a major, but yeah. Number 1, it's got a huge trophy.
Number 1 stoner. Right. Yeah, usually this is very victorious. In fact, it's even called victory in some decks, if I'm not mistaken. And a person is coming back from a long journey, and there's people celebrating with him. It's not uncommon for him to have like a wand, and then there's like a wreath on the wand. So it's like very much like a synthesized sort of thing. The wreath being circular, the wand being like a pole, poles and holes, So there's like a completion sort of dynamic with it. And so presumably people are celebrating this person's return because he did good work, that there was something that he accomplished while he was out. And so the townspeople are like returning the favor for his good deed or whatever it might be. So there you go. He got an award. So
This is
7
cool. We got
of
like an
wands.
anti-war.
Right.
Right, because you've got the dub of peace down here too. No bombs.
Interesting. Usually you see sort of the conflict that I think they're kind of speaking about here with the artwork. You see a guy with 1 wand and he's kind of like defending himself. A lot of the 7 cards, what I've picked up, have something to do with like you versus like other people, like your back being up against the wall and maybe you having conflict with others. Ultimately, I think it's kind of conflicts with yourself personally, but they're kind of showing sort of like, maybe remedying that situation or circumstance or something like that.
I like that. Yeah, the conflict is real obvious once you say it that way.
Yeah. Okay, so the Eight of Wands now. Right, yeah, swiftness. Okay, interesting. So it's usually eight wands flying through the air. And so there's like an implied speed sort of thing, like an in the moment kind of thing that's related to it. Um, oh,
Well,
right.
because
Well, I can.
they're taking these out to go, right?
That's exactly. Yeah. They're preparing for later. So they can just light it up wherever they're at or whatever they're doing. Yep, that makes sense. So they're saving time for later.
Okay, here's the 9. We've got a medical card.
So the 9, medical marijuana. What is the 9 again? Oh, right. Yeah. Well, that makes sense too. I love it. You usually see a guy, he's all banged up and he's holding on to one wand, and then there's 8 other wands beside him. And so he just went through an ordeal. He just went through some sort of struggle, but he's still surviving. He's still there, but he could use he could use some cannabis. He could take care of himself a little bit, and he needs to mend. Basically, he needs to heal. So
Well,
that's what they're talking
that
about
actually
here.
makes a lot of sense for medical versus recreation, right? Like the
Oh yeah,
emphasis
there you
here is
go.
that it's like a medical issue.
Right. Yep. You got it.
All right, here's 10.
That's funny.
Abundance or what?
It's usually a guy holding all of these wands, but he's on the brink, in my opinion, of like letting them go or of not being able to handle the load. And so he is doing it all on his own. So there is like an overbearing sort of thing. In fact, that's actually the card I pulled for myself today, which I think is kind of interesting. I pulled 2 cards today. That's one of them. But yeah, it's almost like the workload is almost too much, something along those lines. And so they're just showing all of these wands, symbolically in his hand.
The page. We've got a fancy paper.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I
And we've
mean,
got 3 missing matches. I don't know if that's important.
right. Yeah, I don't know either. But I guess it kind of looks maybe a little bit like a amateur setup or something. Is what they're trying to go for. Simple, nothing too complicated,
The
right?
knight, I like this.
That's an upgrade, right? That's really funny. Yeah. So
We got like
definitely need more skills to roll that one.
Is the next one's going to be across a Lorraine? No.
It's gonna be a lady's hand. Yep, I knew it. So there you go. Right, Queen of Joints. Nice.
And are these those cat knuckles that women use for protection? Is that what that is?
I don't know. I've never seen that before.
They're I mean,
it.
imagine, like brass knuckles, but they make
Right.
like little cat ears, and the ears are usually sharpened. It looks just like those. I don't know
That's
what else
cool.
it would be.
Nice. I like it. I hope it is. Oh, you know what's funny? Probably why they included this too. The Queen of Wands, it's not uncommon for her to have a cat next to her. And so she usually has like a little black cat, if I'm not mistaken, in some versions of her card. So here it is right there. So there's a little black cat down below.
Oh, hold on,
There
let me pull it
is.
up.
Right. So the cat symbolism, Leo and everything else. So the cat is very deliberate here, for sure.
The king. We've got the crown as 2 different symbols. We got a tattoo on the hand, and then the ashtray itself.
Nice. I like that they're mixing it up, actually. That's cool. And then the
And
fleur
we
de
got a
lis.
fleur de lis, yeah.
Yeah, totally on the middle finger. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, that looks appropriate for this deck, I would say.
The fool. Oh, and there's a little.
Oh, now we got the
hair in
major arcana
bag and it's
stuff.
falling out.
Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah, totally. Well, a lot of older full cards, he's wearing like his clothes are disheveled. It almost like some of his like what looks like his like underwear is like hanging off of him. Something along these lines. It could be like really loose, and sometimes they look very, very homeless, especially a lot of older full cards. So I can kind of see this making sense. The magician, right? Oh yeah, so there you go. They're all of the elements are present. So all of the different ways that they're showing the 4 elements are on the table there. And then the infinity sign is like a classic sort of, in my opinion, it's very mercurial. So that makes sense that it would be on this card. High
The
Priestess,
High Priestess.
the two pillars. I like the touch with the ring there with the yin yang, and then the crescent moon in between. Yeah, totally makes sense. The stars, right?
And I believe those are Corinthian as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they are with the amount of ornate design.
Right, right.
Or they might actually those might be composite because you kind of see the Ionic and the Doric in there.
They might try and maybe they're trying to allude to smoke a little bit too, with how they're kind of creating that artwork with the pillars.
The Empress, which is specifically labeled
Indica.
as Indica.
Well, she's usually seated, and so indica, is more of that kind of weed. So I can kind of see this being a thing. Is indica more of like a medical thing too, by chance, or not? Not so much. I don't know.
I don't believe so. I mean, honestly, I'm probably the worst person to ask this because I don't think that what people prescribe to these different things is actually true. Usually, they'll say like indica is like a sleepier, heavier body thing, and a sativa is supposed to be a cerebral, sort of right-brained, energetic thing. Although I don't know if I believe any of that, but that's usually the way that it's described, and that the indicas, I believe, are from like the Kush region. I might have that reversed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I asked just because I wonder if there is some sort of like if they're implying some sort of medicinal value with it or something along these lines. These guys could have their own impression of that or something. Kind of an interesting sort of take for the Empress. I don't know what to think about it because it's very different.
I mean, if it's indica and it puts you to sleep, then you've got like a nighttime lunar moon thing. I'm stretching, but you've got the feminine sleepy moon kind of vibe.
Now, that could very well be what they're going for. Definitely. Yeah. So I wonder now if we're going to see a sativa bud somewhere. Okay. Is the Empress indica and the Emperor... Yep. There you go.
So, and Makes this sense. Would be like a burst of energy, like I guess like masculine energy, fire, sun energy.
Yep. In the context between these two cards, that makes a lot more sense, right? For sure. So I could see what they're going for.
Yeah, JD Vance likes indica. Couch bud. The Hierophant.
Okay. Yep. Very similar to the High Priestess because there's always the twin pillars there. Like I said, the peace sign sort of thing always associated with the Hierophant. And so it's almost like a blessing sort of thing, right? Again, they're not really showing people, so they're only going to show the hand. And then, yeah, I don't know. Very, very basic sort of version of the Hierophant. They could have put crossed keys in there or something maybe. Lovers, okay.
And we're spinning up two different types of strains at once. Mix them together.
Yeah, exactly. They're contrasting each other. The grinders, one is closed, one is pink, one is open, one is blue. And so there's always sort of that dualistic sort of thing with this card. So
the Chariot, nice. It's a very good one.
That's a good one, yeah. Makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, totally. So any vehicle symbolism and animals that travel, and as it relates to the Chariot, they're all journey symbols, so they relate to terrestrial journey, but then ultimately I think that they relate to the journey to the other side as well, to the great beyond, journey of the afterlife.
Strength, and this is a 1,000 milligram chocolate bar edible.
Right. Yep, totally. So gonna see, how strong your mind is, your constitution is with this guy. For sure. So they're taking it pretty literally with that, I would say. Strength. Obviously, usually you see a lion. The Hermit one hitter.
One hitter. What a great symbol for that, man.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I like this one. I like it for a few different reasons. One, it implies a solitary smoke sesh, obviously going within. I've seen some really, when I was in India, I saw this one piece of art, and it was like a Shiva-like figure, but he was really buff, and he was in the mountains, and he was smoking by himself, and it was like, it kind of blew my mind. It looked really, really cool. And weed grows all over the place in India too, just like out and about. Like you could just be traveling and you see it like all on the side of the roads and everything else. And so the solitary thing I think makes sense. And then also the hermit is always upright. And so he's always upright. He kind of looks a little stiff. You know, oftentimes he has like a hunchback sort of thing, but he looks kind of phallic unto himself. And he always has that staff with him too, right? And so they're kind of keeping with that really rigid, upright nature with the one hitter as well.
Oh, right. It's totally the staff. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And it's that nighttime toke sesh too.
It is. Yep, definitely.
Wheel of Fortune.
That's a good idea. You know, not an actual wheel itself, but circular, definitely. So that's cool. I like it, and it looks like maybe
And we're gonna have
some
tinctures, and you've probably got your ground, and you've got your pre-rolls and your bong, and there's the medical bag from the dispensary, and then I guess this is. I don't know if that's weed.
I don't think it's weed. Yeah, we won't be smoking that, but yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a little shelf, but it's circular. That's cool. Very different, but justice makes sense. You know, you just have the scales, and yeah, you're weighing the buds against each other. So I like that. Very simple, you know, but gets the job done.
The hangman. Great.
Yeah, they're curing the weed. Makes perfect sense. Obviously, when else? You know, I'm just thinking in the process of harvesting and everything else, that makes sense to have it for it to be hanging there. Yeah, that's cool.
Death. We got some fallen soldiers.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like it. I mean, you're just showing the hand of death instead of showing death itself. You know, my guess would be this is just like an art design sort of thing. I wonder how capable this artist is of drawing people. And so their compromise was just using hands for everything. And so sometimes it has to do with your limitations as an artist, you know, the style you end up going with. But I think this gets the job done.
Yeah, I don't know how anatomically correct this position of the bones in the hand are.
No, definitely.
Maybe didn't go to pay attention to anatomy as much.
Right.
Temperance.
Interesting. Okay.
This is munchies.
Munchies.
We're looking at munchies here.
Right. Okay. So usually you see an angel and they have two cups, and sometimes, you know, they have 1 foot in water, 1 foot out of water. There's usually mountains behind them. A lot of times it relates to alchemy. There's so much magical, alchemical stuff going on with the cards. So I'm actually, to be honest with you, I'm kind of at a loss for this one a little bit. Not sure exactly what they were going for here. Well, I mean, I know what they're going. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's like pace yourself. Don't eat everything here.
I see. Okay, gotcha. Tempering. Okay.
Yeah, like these are all the things that you're gonna want at 420, but maybe don't. Or just pick your top 3.
Gotcha. Yeah.
The devil.
The devil
is broken glass. I guess the jars are broken.
Usually you see the devil and he's perched on a like a black pedestal that actually looks a lot like the monolith from 2001. And then you have 2 people kind of before him, and they're usually chained to that pedestal. And so the whole thing is that usually the chain looks loose so that they can actually get out themselves if they really wanted to. So it's kind of by their own choice that they're even there. But they look, so obviously these bottles are broken. So you can almost see the connection between these 2 people being chained to the devil's pedestal as being broken themselves, which is why they're even there to sort of begin with.
Did you have an altar with a pizza piece on it?
That's hilarious. Yeah, man. I don't remember ever talking about that, but I must have. I have it right there. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah.
Dude, nothing escapes my Shuri.
I know. Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. Yeah, right. Okay, I see what she's saying with that. Yeah, this is hilarious. This is one of the cards that I saw online that made me want to look at this deck even more. Just the blasted tower, but instead of a tower, it's a bong. Makes perfect sense. Losing a piece, if you like it, it can feel devastating. But it's all just part of the cycle of life, in my opinion.
Yeah. Just hope it wasn't like an OG Jerome Baker or something.
Right. Star. Okay, cool.
Star.
That's interesting. Yeah, put a star on a lighter there, and then other stars in the background. Obviously, very, very different take, but I kind of just like the creativity behind it. That's interesting. Okay, just a very simple moon. Looks like a high moon, maybe. But yeah, usually, obviously, you generally see like two towers and all sorts of things going on there, but they just chose to do the moon itself. No canopy. Oh well, I guess they're showing it in the eyes, right? For this guy.
Yeah, the bloodshot eyes.
The bloodshot eyes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
why are they? Well, I guess sunflower because it's a sun. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, sunflowers are a common thing in the sun card. Generally, you see like two children holding hands or something along these lines, in front of like a brick wall, and then yeah, the sunflowers and big old sun. So interesting. Nothing too crazy there. Judgment. Oh, okay. So an ashtray, then if you got some small buds in one side and then ash in the other one. This kind of reminds me, usually in this card, you see an angel coming from the heavens and then people kind of like rising from their crypts or tombs, from the earth itself. And so it's like an as above kind of meeting the below, kind of coming together sort of in the middle. And so, yeah, I think they're kind of saying something along these lines here. The people that are coming
a
from their
yin yang
crypts.
sort of feel to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Exactly. Right. People in the crypts, they're like all gray and stuff, and they kind of look like zombies or something like that sometimes.
The world.
The world. Right. Okay. Yeah. The four elements in the corners. That's pretty traditional. The two hands coming together, holding the one bud. That's interesting. Generally, you see a woman dancing again, and she's oftentimes she has like two wands that she's kind of twirling. She's usually dancing, or something along those lines. But yeah, this is not a bad take. And then the leaves in the background creating a circle. Usually she's within some sort of wreath or something like that too, or something that's oval or circular. So they're kind of paying respects to that classic setup there.
And that was it.
Excellent, man.
So it sounds like we're gonna save this one for next time, but I'm just gonna do a card pull.
Do
So
it.
if I was gonna do a proper card pull, how many do I pull? 1, 3, 5?
Maybe just pull one for now and see what comes up.
Okay. Is this gonna
You
tell
can
me
do
how the rest of my day is gonna go?
You can have it your way. Whatever you want to do. If you do a
Let's
card
do
pull,
one. Let's do one so we can leave some. Oh man, I already love the back of these cards.
ooh, nice. Oh yeah, this is going to be a fun one to talk about. This artist is
Okay.
cool, man. I like their stuff.
So here I'll shuffle this one up
Cool.
very briefly, and then I'll just grab one off the top. Let's see when I feel one. No, I'm not feeling that one. There we go. This one feels good.
Boom. Nice, dude. Cool. That's awesome. So the magician card, the one eye, that's cool. I like its hat. Oh, see, I love it. Yeah, this is rad. Oh man, all the personality that they put into everything. The magician's table is like a character unto itself. The fact that they have the sword sticking into the table, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. That's pretty interesting. And then usually the magician, like on the Rider-Waite version, they're really closely aligning the color combinations with the Rider-Waite version. But usually there are like vines and flowers above and then stuff from below, too. So they retain the belt that's a serpent and everything. Pretty cool, man. I like it. This is going to be a good time.
Yeah, this will be a fun one to break down. So
For sure.
I'll set that one aside for next time.
That's the
And I've
perfect
got a
one
couple
card
other-
pull right there for what we're doing and everything else, man. That's rad.
Right? Almost like I planned it. I didn't though. I didn't. I've got 3 other cards. These aren't tarot cards. I just wanted to show these off.
Sure.
These are some trading cards from Paranoid American Conspiracy Cards set. So this is just a NASA one. It's the cover of the NASA comic, Never a Straight Answer. These are based on old Marvel trading cards. This one is Stanley Kubrick directing Lord of the Rings starring the Beatles, which might have actually happened, but it didn't. But in the comic book, it does. And then another one I just grabbed at random. This is the foil homunculus card from the Homunculus Owner's Manual that I did with Juan Ayala. So just a couple little examples of that. And
That's
what
awesome.
else? Here's my plug for the day. Right now, even if you missed it, even if you missed the foil cover and the variant cover edition, you can get this main cover of the NASA comic at nasacomic.com. You can get it right now for maybe the next week or two until they all come in and I start shipping them out. So if you grab one of these, you'll get some cards into your pack, a bunch of other really cool stuff. So if you're interested in that, if you like Stanley Kubrick, you like conspiracies or comics or any of those, definitely check out nasacomic.com. So let me have you do your plugs, man. Where should people find you? What do you got going on? Where should they send the money to?
So symbolicstudies.com is where people can find all of my stuff. Right now, I'm really digging the Patreon series that I'm doing. So I'm going through the major arcana and doing a custom, basically, presentation for each card of the major arcana. So I just released my 6th episode. I'm going to be doing the Lover's card here pretty soon. So you can check that out at patreon.com/symbolic studies, or you can actually become a subscriber through my website itself if you want to avoid Patreon for whatever reason. But that's pretty much it, man. Thanks for prompting this and hosting and everything else. I had a great time.
Thank you. I'm excited to knock out the next one. It sounds like it might be a really cool one. So it definitely looks like everyone had a great time with this in the chat. So I feel like we'll do at least a few more of these. Slick, I saw you out there. I'll have you on. We'll do some Slick tarot breakdowns too. Someone suggested breaking down Magic the Gathering cards. That would be kind of cool. I sold most of mine when I was like 14 to get a bike. So it was a Dyna. It wasn't a Mongoose. Couldn't afford the Mongoose, but I got Dyna. But anyways, I don't have any of the cool. I used to have dual lands. I think I even had one of those artifacts. You tap for 0 and you got some. It wasn't like the Mox Ruby or whatever the hell it was, but I mean, if I would have saved them, I could probably just retire off of the Magic cards that I used to have, but I don't. I've got some newer ones, so maybe I'll break those out. If anyone's got Magic cards they want to send them to me, and I'll cover them.
Awesome, man. I love that. That would actually be a really good time. My buddy who has a ton of Magic cards, on occasion, I just look through them and thumb through them and stuff, and I'm like always impressed with the artwork and just kind of everything about it. So that would be great.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, chat. You were awesome today. We'll do more of these, and we'll do more of these paranoid pages. I got a bunch of other stuff now that the NASA comic thing is already shipped, and I'm planning for the next ones. I got some free time, so thanks for everyone for hanging out, man. I had an awesome time with you and everyone else.
Yeah, man. All right. Until next time.
All right. See you guys.
Paranoid. Yeah. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real, the real, you will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blood smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.